All right, everybody. Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed. I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I'm happy to be here with you. Thank you for joining me. This is our Sunday live stream. We're happy to be here with you every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We reach out on all the social media to hear what you have to say, whatever it is that you think about the issues that are affecting us all. And we're happy to see people speaking to us from all across the world, reaching us on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, calling into the program, or reaching us on Facebook Messenger to speak about what they think are important issues. And we look forward to hearing all of your comments. If it is the first time that you are joining us, we welcome you. We thank you for being part of our audience. And we're going to talk about a lot of things, but remember at every step, this is about you. This is about what you think is important, about the issues that affect you. And I do want to start off, there is some breaking news, and I do want to mention that. And this is, excuse me, I misspelled Ohio. But there is some breaking news that just came out about half an hour ago. And I don't know that a lot of people have heard about this. There is another train derailment in Ohio. 28 cars were derailed just outside of Springfield in Ohio. There was a train, 212 cars long, and 28 of those cars have derailed. But at this time, we're being told there were no chemicals, there was no spill, no danger to the local public. So, as far as we can tell at this time, even though it's in Ohio, even though it's yet another train derailment, this one does not pose a safety risk to the public. But it is about 1 month after the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, which is continuing to have a problem and continuing to be a danger to the public. So it's interesting news, and it tells us that our train systems are not fixed. They're not better yet. And of course, they're not going to be. This is something that was supposed to be handled under the Obama-Biden administration. This was the shovel-ready jobs that we were guaranteed to bring the United States out of the 2008-2009 recession, that this was going to improve the infrastructure of the United States, and God knows we doubled our national debt. Doubled our national debt under the Obama-Biden administration to take care of our infrastructure. At least that's what we were told then. Yet, as we see today with this breaking news, that's not the case. The cleanup is happening right now. No one has been injured as far as all the news that has come out so far. But it just goes to show you the promises we keep getting do not match up to the reality of what we see. They keep telling us that they're going to spend trillions of dollars to fix our nation, to prepare us for the future, to make you safe. And yet, over and over again, we see that that reality does not come true. And we would imagine that Pete Buttigieg is going to be more active in this case because of the negative publicity he's already received for not dealing with the outbreak, the dangerous chemicals that, under his guidance, the Department of Transportation is releasing into the air that is affecting not just Ohio, but New York State, and also what we're going to see affecting Pennsylvania. That's just the way the wind blows. So it's going to be very interesting. I see we have our early comment. James is with us. Hello, James. And James mentions ongoing Fukushima core meltdowns into the Pacific 12 years on. TEPCO admits the other day it'll probably never be cleaned up. Well, I don't know about never, James. It's very much like what we see over in Russia or 3 Mile Island. We do get a handle on them eventually, but the damage is ongoing and it will last for decades. I mean, it is radioactive materials. But it is a good point that this is something that is happening in our world. Now, the key is, this is why we have to stay on top of our government. because they will do things and then they let the news drop off. They imagine that we will forget about these things so that they don't have to focus on it. Now, obviously, Fukushima is in Japan. This is obviously centered around the Japanese government. And the Japanese people need to be forthright about dealing with that. And I think to a larger extent they have been. But it means we have to be just as forthright in the United States. And we have to consider the consequences of these things. It's like when they tell us, oh, we need more ethanol. Ethanol is the answer to everything. We will improve the climate because we're going to use more ethanol. But they forget to tell everyone, oh, by the way, that's also destroying our oceans. It's killing the fish, the plankton, the algae. It destroys everything in our oceans. There is a dead zone the size of the state of New Jersey in the Gulf of Mexico right now. And it only exists. The only reason why it's there is because of ethanol. And they're increasing the amount of ethanol every year. We are continuing. We have over 21 million gallons of ethanol that is made. There is a glut of ethanol. We have more ethanol than we need, and they are still producing more. And they know that it is, and this is scientific, the studies have been done since 2008. We know ethanol is destroying the Gulf of Mexico. So just like, as you mentioned, James, people aren't paying attention to what's happening in Fukushima and that this has a long-term impact on our environment, those very same environmentalists who don't remember that, oh, ethanol is destroying the Gulf of Mexico. It's destroying our oceans. It's affecting our food. It's affecting our environment. And they're perfectly happy with that because ethanol is clean. It's crazy. Thank you, Dal. Yes, the cold is, if you can hear it in my voice, it's a little bit off. I apologize for that. But otherwise, yeah, Sunday's going decently. Other than the fact that we're seeing that there's more train derailments, there's people not paying attention to the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. We're seeing that Fukushima is still a problem. There's a lot of issues that we need to be aware of. And I know people, when you watch this show, sometimes people will say, but Mike, there's just too much stuff to handle. Here's the thing. Pick one thing. Just pick one thing, one issue that is important to you. I don't care what it is. And you follow that. If it's the Fukushima meltdown, if it's 3 Mile Island, if it's the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, if it's trying to balance the budget or gun control, whatever it is, that's your issue. Whatever you believe in, you follow that. And just be good at understanding what that thing is and how it affects the rest of the world. And if we can all just do that, there's 350 million people in America alone. If we are paying attention, if everyone picks one thing and they just try and make sure we get to the best solution for that one thing, the world will be better off. It's just that easy. So you don't have to follow everything. I follow everything, but I'm a political news junkie. I've been doing political commentary for 17 years. I don't expect you to follow everything. I expect you to follow your thing and tell me if I miss it. Tell me if there's things that are happening about it that I don't know about that I should be aware of. Let's share that news so people hear about the rest of the stuff, but it keeps our politicians on message. It keeps them on the point to be effective and efficient in what they are doing and stop selling us pipe dreams, smoke and mirrors and doing nothing effective. Because that's what Pete Buttigieg did. He gave us nothing. He told us, it's all okay. It's all being handled. Well, yeah. And what's the long-term impact? What about the 20,000 people who are being affected? What about when that wind hits New York or Pennsylvania and all the families that have to deal with those chemicals in the air that you can't do anything about? What about 5 years from now when we have the impact of that start affecting people? See, that's why we need to stay on top of these politicians. This affects everyone. Yeah, and Dow says just follow one thing, but be aware of everything else. And that's hopefully what this channel allows people to be able to do. To follow one thing, you follow your thing, and then we can hear about the other things that are affecting everyone, including your thing. And that's how we make a better government. That's how we make a better nation and a better world. That is the best way. James mentions, what's Pete Buttigieg's experience on transportation issues anyway? He has very limited experience. He was a mayor, and that's great. You know, he was a mayor. He has some executive office knowledge, but he's never really dealt with something like this. He doesn't really have transportation experience. That's not his forte. So it's not surprising that we see he's failing because he's not thinking it through properly, but he's not supposed to. His job is to just be the front man, to be a smiling face, and more importantly, Pete Buttigieg is gay, so you can't question him. See, that's part of the whole diversity, equity initiative in the government. That's what, remember, Joe Biden, I think it was day 2 that he was in office, signed off on an executive order that the United States government has to focus on diversity and equity. We have to hire more people of different colors of skin, and we have to have more sexual preferences in our government because that's fair. It makes everything equal and makes everything good. Except he leaves out the fact that that doesn't actually solve anything. That doesn't mean you have the right people or the best people. It just means that you have more people who have browner skin. It just means that you have more people who have different sexual preferences when they go to bed at night in their home behind closed doors. I don't care about any of that. None of that is actually a qualification. None of that is actually effective or efficient at doing their jobs. None of that is actually meaningful. Who cares? I don't care if you're gay. I don't care if you're trans. I don't care if you call yourself a toaster. I don't care if you have dark skin or light skin. I don't care who you pray to. None of that actually affects whether you can actually do your job. And if we're so worried about what people are doing behind closed doors with their significant other, we're not paying attention to what's happening. Thus, we get the Norfolk derailments, the Ohio train derailments, and other issues that are affecting our nation. And we really need to focus on that stuff. At least that's the way I see that. And I'm always happy to hear your voices. Again, on this channel, you can call into 607-242-9247. You'll see it scrolling above throughout the show. You can call in at any time and say, hey, Mike, I want to talk about this issue. Mike, I think you're wrong. I think there's something important here. Please, I want to hear your voice from anywhere in the world. That's what this is about. It's not just what I think, it's what you think. And we need to make sure that our politicians are hearing this. I know for a fact that there are politicians, not just in local New York State government, not just at the state level, not just in local federal offices, but people down in Congress watch this program on a regular basis. Their staff watch this program to see what the reaction is, to see how many people are reacting to the news. You do make a difference. They will tell me this privately, even though they won't come onto the program, even though they won't respond publicly. But many of these politicians know me personally or are able to contact me. They tell me after the fact, oh yeah, I heard what you said about that. I didn't like this part. I didn't like that part. You could have talked more about the good thing, you could have made them look better. But I'm not here to make them look better. I'm here to tell you what I think is the truth, show you the evidence, and let you make a decision based on that. To give you the opportunity to hear the more full story and understand what happens next. And they don't always like that. But that's what this channel is about, both in the United States, domestic and international, because they are all connected. They are all connected. Now, before I go any further, I also, besides the breaking news, and the good news is, there is no chemical spill in the second train derailment in Ohio. Again, this is something that came out about half an hour ago. The news is circulating. So we know that. I do want to mention, wait a minute, Dow says, I think that it is entirely unacceptable on the part of public servants, such as our elected representatives. Transparency and clear communications has to be the standard. Otherwise, it's not governance. Well, that's one of my problems. It's not governance. It's obey. You can't question him. It's like Pete Buttigieg. Why is Pete Buttigieg in charge of the Department of Transportation? Because Pete Buttigieg is gay. So you can't question him. If you say Pete Buttigieg is failing at his job, which he empirically has failed at, well, you're just a sexist. You're a homophobe. You can't say that about him because he's gay. I'm sorry. One has nothing to do with the other. I don't care who he's going to sleep with at the end of the day. I'm worried about what he's doing during his work day, which has nothing to do with whether or not he's gay or not. His sexual preference does not affect whether or not people in East Palestine are being properly protected and taken care of as they are burning chemicals that are affecting their lives, potentially cancerous chemicals that could affect the lives of children for decades. His sex has nothing to do with it. His sexual preference has nothing to do with it. So it's a deflection. It's a way to stop people from speaking. It's meant to shut down conversation and remove accountability, which I don't believe in. I do not believe that at all. But I did also want to mention before we started the show, besides that breaking news, I did also want to bring up the fact that please, if you get the opportunity, go to the Liberty First Foundation. Every Friday at 9 p.m., they have a roundtable discussion. And I'm part of that discussion, as you can see above. But on this Friday, we had a special guest, and you can see him on the screen right here. This is Mr. Raul Mendez. And the reason why this episode was so powerful is that Raul Mendez is he's a mass shooting survivor. Okay? He's a good guy with a gun. People were being killed. He is one of the survivors. He's one of the reasons why people survived and didn't get killed. This did not get national news. This happened the summer of 2022, about 6 months ago. And it's important to hear what he experienced, how he survived, what he went through and his family went through, and what is happening to this day. It's very important because the major news media, they had the news up and they let it die off. It never made it to the national news in any significant way because the media has a message that they want to put out for you. Guns are bad. Guns are always bad. There is no such thing as a good guy with a gun. There is no such thing as a defensive use of the gun that will save lives. Guns are just evil and we have to get rid of them. Well, it's because he had a gun. He was able to save himself, his family. And I think it's incredibly powerful what he said. So do take an opportunity. Check that out. In addition, I want you to know that we were talking to a Mr. Caleb Slater. He is a candidate in New York, going for the New York State Senate. And if you may recall, last week we were talking about the Satanic Club. And this is an epidemic that is happening across this nation. It's happening more and more. You may not remember or may not realize there are a bunch of after-school programs that are being put forward by the Satanic Temple. Okay? They're not a cult. They're a temple, so they say. And we've seen this in Pennsylvania. We're seeing this in California. It's happening in New York State, where they are going and they're starting new programs to introduce kids to Satanism. They're going to elementary schools and junior high schools to introduce the youth into Satanism. I have big problems with that. I have massive problems with that. And I know that Caleb Slater is going to be dealing with that. He's having a protest about the Satanic Club. And we had an opportunity to speak to this potentially future candidate, potential New York State Senator, to find out why he is going from an entirely different district, an entirely different county, and he is coming to Endwell, New York, Broome County, to protest the satanic club that is expected on March 16th to try and draw in children in Endwell, New York. So we spoke with him about that. Why is he doing it? Why is it that no other politician is willing to step up and make a statement? The Broome County politicians have nothing to say about the Satan Club in their community. But this one guy from outside the community in New York State is coming to this county, this community, to actually fight against that, to have a protest, to say he doesn't think that's the best thing. It's amazing how politicians are so afraid to let their voice be heard, even though the community is not in favor of this. And we see that, we're seeing this trend around the nation. I don't know. Now, if you happen to be someone who believes in Satanism, if you believe in a satanic temple, if you think that children should be introduced to Satanism as young as the ages of 9, 10, 11, 12, if you think that's a good thing, please call into the program, 607-242-9247. Tell me why there should be a Satanist club in Endwell or anywhere in America. Tell me why children should be introduced to Satanism in after school. What's the benefit? What's the good thing there? Please, if you think we're wrong, I want to hear you call in and tell me why this is a benefit to the community. And I will give you all the time you need on this program to present your position. I've made it very clear. I don't agree. I don't think it's positive. If you in the comments disagree with me, go right ahead. If someone wants to call in, tell me, Mike, you're wrong. Satanism is a great thing. I want to hear that. If you agree with me, I'd like to hear that too. But I think it's important, and I think it's very important that we know that at least one politician, or one possible future politician, Caleb Slater, is willing to stand up and make himself heard. This happens to be I'm in the 52nd district, the state Senate district. State Senator Leah Webb, no comment. The Assemblywoman Donna Lapardo, no comment. Politicians, local politicians, have no comment on this. I'm surprised. I don't think that's a benefit for anyone. Dow mentions it isn't positive, as ultimately its goal is self-service at the expense of others. I tend to think so. But, it's amazing that so few of the candidates who are supposed to represent their people, who are supposed to speak for the public, to speak for the majority, or at least those who are actively involved, they're absolutely silent. They're running away from this idea. They're running away from this event that's happening in their backyard. And they're trying to tell the rest of the public, don't forget about it. Don't think about it. It's not important. Yeah, they're having a Satan club. Don't think about it. That's not important news. There's other stuff you should worry about. Climate change. Aren't you worried about climate change? I'm worried about the Satan club in the backyard. Yeah, that's what I'm kind of worried about. Climate change, you know what? New York can do anything and everything it wants to about climate change, and it's not going to stop China from creating more greenhouse gases than all of the United States can reduce in a year. So no, I'm not really worried about climate change. I'm worried about the Satan Club. Am I wrong? I'm not telling you that I'm right. I'm asking you, am I wrong? I'm asking you, because this is happening across America. It happened in Pennsylvania last month. It's happening in California right now. It's happening in New York right now. And you notice it's the blue states. It's the bluer than blue states that we're seeing this start to happen, and it's expanding. It's happening more and more. We haven't seen this kind of growth and attempt at growth of satanic clubs since 2016. And now, all of a sudden, in 2023, we're seeing this wave of satanic cults and clubs starting to take over. Why is that? Because you can't complain, or at least the politicians think you won't complain, because the politicians aren't complaining, because the news media, it's covering the stories on a local basis, and maybe your local community knows about it and no one else. And all the politicians are running away. I don't think that's in your best interest. I could be wrong. And if the community wants to have Satanist clubs, fantastic, then let's hear from the community. People tell me that I'm wrong. Tell me what the benefit is. Because I don't see it. I do not see it. Dow says, isn't the Satanist movement a progressive platform? Yes, it is. It is very much so. As I understand, and I don't know great detail on this, but as I understand, the Satanic Temple and Satanic cults, they are very self-absorbed. They're about the individual. They're about empowering and isolating the individual. They have no benefit towards community or to others. It's all about them. Well, that seems to fit right in line with progressivism. Most of the ideals of progressivism are centered on you as an individual until they get enough power, and then they become socialist, where they remove your individuality. So that's how I understand it, but I could be wrong. And again, if I am, I'm happy to hear from anyone. I will give them all the time they need to try and explain why this is a good thing. I just don't expect that they will win me over, but I will give them the opportunity to voice their opinion. That's what we do on this channel. We are more than happy to hear the voices of others and let them explain to us why there is a benefit that is not obvious. Sadly, most of those progressive ideals never actually are willing to defend themselves, and I would tend to believe that's because they're indefensible. Dow says, I think it has something to do with a hedonistic mindset, helping to propel self-division to move fringe movements to the mainstream that are ultimately destructive. Well, I think it is. I think that's very true, because it destroys the community. It's very much a destructive asset in the community, I believe. People think I'm wrong. I'm happy to hear it. But I've yet to hear anyone tell me or speak up and say, Mike, that's a misunderstanding. Final thing to update, and maybe of interest to people, I got the dates wrong last week. It is now available. You can see the interview I had in the United Kingdom. It's up and available right now. And this is with a group called the Alt-Ernative, as you see on the screen. All the links will be available after the show, where you'll be able to see everything for yourself. But this is my interview with individuals from the United Kingdom. So this is the United Kingdom looking at America. This is what we see across the pond, how they see our country and our culture and our laws. And this is what they're wondering about. It's how they see America and how they are wondering where America is going next. And that's what they were asking me about how I, as an American, see the rest of the world. From their viewpoint, they have a lot of questions. They don't see things the way we do because they have a very different world. And so I do recommend people to check that out, to see that full conversation about how the difference between Europe and the United Kingdom and the United States, and how it's fundamentally very, very different. And I hope people will check that out. Hang on. Again, folks, I have a cold, so bear with me. I know I have a cold, but I'm not going to let that stop me from speaking with you, my audience. I try never to let that stop me. So those are the updates, including the breaking news. But let's get into some of the details. And again, if you want to talk more about any of those issues, I'm more than happy to do so. But it's up to you guys. Send me the text, send me the chat, make the phone call into the program? Yes, the phone is on. So I was just double checking. So I'm more than happy to hear what you have to say about every issue. But let's start. We normally like to start the program dealing with what's happening overseas to come into and then talk about what's happening domestically in America. There's a lot happening. We'll talk about Chris Rock. We'll talk about Bill Maher. I think they both have some very interesting things to say. We're going to talk about what Biden is trying to do, what he has promised he is going to do, and what has been revealed to the public, and some issues that are affecting us. That's on the domestic side. But looking at the rest of the world, things are getting more and more hectic. Excuse me. So we see now South Korea today has come out and announced that they have essentially Star Wars, the Ronald Reagan shield of from missiles that they're trying to implement in South Korea. It's the same concept as what Ronald Reagan suggested in the 80s that all the Democrats laughed at, except now it exists. It's a reality. It is real. It exists in the United States. Now they're trying to put it into South Korea. Excuse me. And it's interesting because this is directly a result of what South Korea threatened the United States with. If you may recall, and we covered it on this program, when Japan decided last month, when Japan decided that they were going to build their own army, South Korea got terrified because they don't like Japan. They don't like China either. All three of them are enemies historically. They have fought many, many wars. And so seeing that Japan is making an offensive military, $325 billion to have an active military in place within 5 years, with China saying that they want to take over Taiwan by military force, and we have Air Force generals who are telling us somewhere between 2025 and 2027 that China is actually going to do it. Well, that made South Korea terrified. So what have South Korea been doing? They have been increasing their military arms, and they threatened America. Give South Korea nuclear weapons, or they will make their own. The compromise, it appears, is that the United States has now decided that we are going to give them the same kind of Star Wars shield from weapons, from nuclear weapons and rockets, that we have in the United States. Thus, they're calling it the Kill Web. It's basically Star Wars, as envisioned by Ronald Reagan. And we're putting that in place for South Korea to try and stop them from getting nuclear weapons, because if South Korea gets nukes, Japan is going to get more nukes, and we're going to see the entire region. Philippines will get nukes, and now everyone's got nukes, and it gets much more dangerous. But this is all because the United States hasn't stopped North Korea from firing off missiles, threatening Japan, threatening South Korea. Because the diplomacy of Antony Blinken, Secretary of State, of Kamala Harris, the Vice President, have failed. In fact, every time Kamala Harris shows up, it makes the situation worse. Oops. Sorry, that's my alarm telling me that we got the show going on today. And so we see that it makes it worse. And I think this is important to keep in mind because they're not making things better. They are making it much, much worse. And that means we're getting closer to a war zone. And that's being complicated by the fact that we see in Moldavia, something that no one's really paid attention to. Moldavia has recently kicked out 2 Russians considered to be spies that were, as Moldavia has said, threatening to be able to take over the government. So it's not just Ukraine, but it seems, according to the state of Moldavia, the country of Moldavia, that Russia is trying to take out other countries. Now, why should you care about that? What does that mean to you? That On February 28th, Moldavia expelled 2 foreigners suspected of in part of subversive activities, which means they were spies and they were trying to take down the Moldavian government. I know. First things first, most people don't even know where Moldavia is. I get it. But it's in the same region of Poland and the Ukraine, and then there's Czechoslovakia, and then there's Moldavia. They're all right there on that border to the rest of what we think of as Europe. And as each of those countries fall, well, that puts more pressure on Europe. Then again, Europe has been taking over most of those countries, the European Union, putting more pressure on Russia. So it goes back and forth. But what this means is that this is more of a danger now. Why does the United States care? Why do the world care? Because Moldavia is a member of the UN. It's a member of the North Atlantic Cooperation Council, which is basically a scaled-down version of NATO. They're part of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and the World Bank. They are part of the World Trade Organization, the WTO, and, of course, the North American Treaty Organization, NATO, Partnership for Peace Program, among others. So they are directly linked to the United States and spending money. If Moldavia is in danger, Europe, again, is militarizing. That means this is escalating. It's another country with another conflict, potentially, another place that we would have to fight. That means things are getting worse, not better. If you thought that Ukraine was beating Russia and that this was over, you're looking at another front. You're looking at another place. Russia, if this is correct, if the country of Moldavia is correct, then Russia is expanding its war, not reducing it. They're not losing. They're going into the next country next. They're expanding their ability to surround the Ukraine and to threaten the rest of Europe. That's why it's a big deal. It means war is getting bigger in that region. We're getting closer to the 3 regional wars that I spoke about for over a year. That this is going to be more U.S. troops may be involved very, very quickly. So if you're thinking that the news media has told you everything you need to know, and you're like, oh, well, Ukraine is winning, and we've got our tanks in there, and we're going to send them F-16s, and it means U.S. advisors are going to be on the ground, in other words, U.S. troops, and NATO forces are going to be on the ground, which means U.S. troops. Well, then we're going to stop them, and we're going to win. And they don't seem to think so. They're expanding the war. They're going potentially to Moldavia to surround the Ukraine and to be able to threaten Poland, which means a bigger war. Dow says, large corporate special interests have been accelerated in governance since the Wilson administration. Evidence for such is as far back as Theodore Roosevelt, even Jackson. Remember Andrew Jackson's supposed last words were, "I killed the banks." Well, that may be true, but I think the more immediate problem is understanding that we're not winning. The Ukraine isn't winning. It's at best a stalemate. And realistically, if we're seeing Russia move into Moldavia, which means they would be threatening Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia. I know most Americans don't know where any of these countries are. We're talking around surrounding Poland. We're talking about getting closer to Germany. We're talking about reestablishing the old Soviet Union. And that's dangerous because they're on an aggressive conquest. They're expanding and conquesting more countries. And they're doing it initially not with tanks and troops, but with internal rioting and taking over governments. Both are just as deadly as the other. And if they're expanding their efforts, then they're not afraid of the United States It means that Russia is not afraid of NATO. They are absolutely not afraid of Biden and Harris. We know that for a fact. They have laughed literally. Literally. Putin has laughed in Biden's face multiple times. The sanctions that they have put out have actually helped the Russian economy. And it has driven Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea together. They have economically been working together. They are trading military weapons amongst themselves. We have created a coalition of governments that all hate each other but hate America more. And they are laughing at the Biden-Harris administration. And there may be no better example of that, that if Russia is conducting these covert operations to take over even more countries while they're fighting in the Ukraine, they think they're winning. Whether or not you think they're winning, they think they're winning. They think they have a winning strategy, and they are expanding. And if the best thing that Biden can do is economics, which is helping them, hurting us, because it has hurt the United States. It has driven up the cost of energy in the United States and in Europe and in the United Kingdom. Then we have a problem. They're seeing that they're winning and Biden is weak. Yeah, he put 31 tanks into Russia. Are you kidding me? 31 tanks? Are you kidding? Russia has the fourth largest army in the world. And you're telling me that 31 tanks is going to make the difference? Are you kidding? It's not serious. It's not realistic. But you may think I am wrong, and I am perfectly happy to hear that. But I can also tell you that we're seeing the rest of the world. Remember how the United States, we're told, all the Democrats, all the progressives have told you, walls don't work. America doesn't need a wall on the southern border or the northern border, which I would say we need both. But no, we shouldn't do that. Even though there's 130 countries around the world that use walls. Finland is building a wall right now because of Russia. See, Finland saw what is happening with Moldavia. They're seeing what's happening with the Ukraine. They are afraid of Russia trying to step in and take them over as well. So they're building a wall to protect themselves and also to keep out refugees. Gee, does that sound familiar? Refugees and people trying to escape various conflicts, and they're building up a wall. But we're told by progressives in the United States, walls don't work. Israel has walls. Finland is building walls. Poland has walls. Germany has walls. You're telling me they don't work? Then why are these countries around the world doing exactly that? The one thing that the United States will not do under the Biden-Harris administration, the one thing that we did see was somewhat effective and absolutely more effective than the open door policy that we have right now. We have 5 million illegal aliens, the greatest number of illegal aliens to enter this nation ever under the Biden-Harris administration. And they're saying, well, but walls don't work. You know what? Maybe they don't work perfectly, but if they even slowed the numbers down from record levels of illegal aliens, maybe it's worth a shot. Finland thinks it's worth a shot. Poland thinks it's worth a shot. Look at this. They are building it right now. This is news from one day ago. They're building a 124-mile fence on the border with Russia. Do you think that they would waste their time and their money to build a wall if they didn't think it would have some kind of impact? That it might be some kind of use? Dow says, I saw someone trying to argue that Judaism and Christianity should not be proponents of walls because of, remember, Jericho. Now, for those who are not of the Christian or Judeo-Christian faith, or even I think the Islamic faith would also know this story. The walls of Jericho. You may have heard that. Tumbling down. It's been in various songs. Tumbling down, tumbling down. Who is that? Mellencamp, the singer. Mellencamp was talking about. The walls will come tumbling down like the walls of Jericho. Basically, it's a parable, a story in the Bible that talks about there were Christians who were trying to fight in Israel, and they were trying to secure the land, and they blew a horn which tore down the walls, which allowed them to beat their enemies and take over a fort. Roughly, essentially. That's the story. So if someone's saying, well, Christians shouldn't support walls because, well, one of the stories in the Bible is about tearing down walls, that's someone who hasn't actually read the Bible and has no concept of the other battles, the other fights, and the fact that every other place had walls. It wasn't that we didn't believe in walls. It's because we were fighting an enemy, and that's how we beat them, by destroying the walls. Walls aren't perfect, especially when those walls are blocking faith. The parable there is faith is stronger than the walls put up by, according to the Bible, fake religions or false gods or lack of belief. That God can break through those walls and allow his people to have victory. That's the parable. That's the additional message. Not that Christians and Jews don't believe in walls. That's stupid. Of course we do. It's that the power of God makes those walls to protect Christians and Jews stronger and makes the walls of their enemies weaker because of faith. That's essentially what the Jericho story is about. But it's interesting because, again, this is people who are trying to say, well, walls aren't effective. They're trying to find another way to say walls don't work, except around the world, and it doesn't matter whether you're Christian, Jewish, Islamic, you could be Hindu, doesn't matter. Walls work. The Great Wall of China still works. These things are effective. Are they the most effective thing? Maybe not. Are they perfect? No. Will people still get through? Sometimes. But the fact is, they're not meant to stop forever. They're meant to slow down, to impede and to make it harder for the enemies to be able to take advantage of you. That there isn't just an open door that they can walk right through at massive points so that you have no control of your country, of your border, of who is entering. I think it's very important to understand that Finland is looking at this, that they are building up these 124-mile fence, and they're doing this because they have the example of the United States. We had, I believe it was 98, according to the most recent discussion in Congress, we had 98 suspected terrorists enter the United States in 2022 alone, which is a significant increase in the number of terrorists that have tried to enter the United States illegally through our southern border. We've never seen so much. And that's the people we caught. That's the ones that we know of. There is estimated by the southern border, by the Border Patrol, that some 500,000 people got away that we didn't catch, that are just in our nation. How many of them could be illegals? Not illegals, terrorists. How many of them are terrorists amongst those illegal aliens? If we know that at least 98 that we caught, and you may say, well, Mike, no, it doesn't matter. It's only one. Even if there was just one terrorist that we didn't catch, that was part of that 500,000 that got in, how many lives are you willing to give up because that one terrorist got in? Because that one terrorist gets a van. They get a car. They go to a parade. I'm not saying this to encourage that. I'm not even trying to make you afraid. I want you to be aware. This is the consequence of not trying to increase the security, to at least slow down, to impede, to make anyone who has a negative impression of America to have a second guess. And remember, the enemies of the United States, just like the enemies of the European Union, of the United Kingdom, of Israel, they don't care if you are a progressive. They don't care if you're a Democrat or a socialist. You're an American, so they want you dead. They don't care about your politics. They don't care about your gender. And in fact, in many cases, because of your gender or your sexual preference, some of these terrorists will kill you even harder and faster because they don't believe in your gender having certain rights. They don't believe in your sexual preference having existence. The fact that you exist is the reason why some of these terrorists are trying to kill you. So everyone's like, well, we don't need walls and these terrorists will just stop if we just stop. No, they aren't. Because your existence is the problem. Not your compliance, your existence. That's what, and if you think I'm wrong, just listen to the Ayatollah Khomeini, the Ayatollah of Iran, since 1980. Okay? 4 decades. 1980. The Ayatollah of Iran has said death to America. All Americans. Left, right, progressive, conservative, Democrat, libertarian. He doesn't care. He wants you all dead. He has never once not said, I want to kill America. He has never once said, I don't want to kill Israel. Iran, the Ayatollah, has always said he wants to kill Europe, Israel, and the United States, and in the exact reverse order. United States first, Israel second. Well, Israel and the United States kind of tied, and then Europe, which includes the United Kingdom. He wants you all dead. He's been saying that since the 1980s. Actually, the original Ayatollah said that. This is the second one. So they don't care. And when you are faced with an ideology that does not care what you believe and only believes that your existence is reason enough to kill you, yes, I think a wall is a good idea. Finland seems to agree with me. Finland says their enemy, Russia, Putin, is deadly enough and dangerous enough, they need to slow them down. No one's saying that the wall is going to keep Russia out of Finland, but it slows them down. It makes it harder, and therefore it makes them safer. Doesn't that make sense? I mean, if we can learn anything, can we learn that? Can we understand that? Because I think it's kind of important. And I don't think everyone's thinking that through in the same way. These are our NATO allies. These are the nations that we're supposed to be supporting. And yet in America, we're doing the exact opposite of all of our allies, all of our friends. In the United Kingdom, Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister of England, is trying to kick out all of the refugees. He is stopping, he's not going to just blindly accept, or at least these are the words he said as he took office, that he's not just going to blindly accept refugees and illegal immigrants into the United Kingdom, because it doesn't work. We have our allies, Poland, Finland, they're building walls. But the United States is doing the exact opposite. And we're wondering why we have a negative impact, why we're getting a negative result. Gee, maybe the lesson is being shown to us around the world. The countries that said, the European Union for 5-7 years said, they're just going to open their doors and everyone can walk on in and there's no such thing as borders. And today, those very same people are building walls and saying, you can't come in. Maybe we should learn from their lesson. Does it not make sense? Folks, if it doesn't make sense, if there is a better argument, tell me what it is. If you think that the United States is somehow special and different than all the other nations in the world, they're giving us the example that this policy failed, that open borders is a failure, that it endangers the public and it hurts your economy. If you think there's a better answer to that, I am wide open to hear this. If there is any elected official across America, any elected official at any level of government who would like to call into this program and explain to me why it is good for America, clipping there, if they want to explain to me why it's good to have an open border, I am happy to hear what you will say. I will not attack you. I will respect you. I will respect your position. I will hear out your argument. I will be happy to see your evidence. But all the evidence that I can find and every example I can find around the world says you're wrong. Every example around the world, all evidence around the world says open borders is a stupid idea, that it is counterproductive. It makes the people less safe, and it makes the economy worse. Every example around the world. I am not aware of an example anywhere in the world where it has been a benefit. And I would ask anyone who believes that there's a benefit to it, show me the example. Show me the news, the credible news source from any government in the world that has open borders. Please show me that. Because as far as I can find, it doesn't exist. You don't have to agree with me. Tell me why. I just asked for it. And I'm asking that is open to any politician in the United States. Any of them, any levels, local, state, federal. You think I'm wrong? In California, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, New York State, New Jersey. These are all borders. Illinois. If any of you guys want to come in and say, Mike, you just don't understand. Okay, what don't I understand? Please explain it to me. And yet we get nothing but silence. Of course, that makes me think. So, again, this is how when we're looking at overseas, it gives us an example of what's going on here in the United States. That we have the examples available to us if we pay attention to them. And they're telling us we're doing the wrong thing. That the Biden-Harris administration is leading us down the wrong path. And their answer is, well, you have to accept it. You shouldn't ask questions. Don't think about it. Just obey. Just obey. I'm sorry, just obey isn't a good answer. I mean, it's great for a slave, but it's not good for a thinking, free public. That's not the answer. Because when we have a government that's saying, just obey, we wind up with what we see. And tell me you don't think this happened in the United States. The United Kingdom's health chief leaked messages revive raw pandemic debate. Here's the thing. This is from the AP News. Came out 3 days ago. It wasn't a big thing in the United States in covering this. But this is very important. This wasn't something that got a lot of attention in the United States this week, and it should have. Because 100,000, there were 100,000 private messages from the members of the British government, the United Kingdom, the Prime Minister, the Health Minister, several members of the United Kingdom's government. And what did they find out in those 100,000 private messages? That everything they told the public was a lie. That they knew for a fact masks would not help. Shutting down schools would not help. They knew that there was no reason to have the lockdowns, that everything they were doing was counterproductive and would hurt the public, but politically it looked good. And that's not me saying this. This is news coming out of London. This is the information that we are learning about the United Kingdom's government itself from verified private emails that have now been leaked to the public. This is from Health Secretary Matt Hancock from 2020. It's now being called the Pandemic Diaries. Think about that. And then think about the United States. If the United Kingdom was having an internal discussion where their prime minister, their health secretary, scientists were telling them that the things they were telling the public were wrong, that masks were not going to work, that locking down schools weren't going to work, that vaccinating children made no sense, that the children were fine, that the number one group of people who were the least at risk were children, and that was the group that had the least reason to be protected. This is what the government is saying. This is what the United Kingdom's government is saying. Do you think the United States government had any different kind of conversation? Do you think that there wasn't the same exact conversation happening here in the United States? That the United Kingdom, the greatest ally of the United States, the closest nation to the United States, that at no point did they decide that when their scientists and when their government is internally saying this doesn't work, it doesn't make sense, it's not protecting anyone, do you think they never had a conversation with anyone in the United States government? Not once? The National Health Services, the NHS of the United Kingdom, never had a conversation with the CDC? Do you actually believe that? And if you don't believe that, if you believe that the United States was having a conversation in reference to the pandemic on a regular basis with the United Kingdom, and we knew that they internally understood that all of the lockdowns were absolutely useless, that they were counterproductive, that they were hurting people, hurting more people than the pandemic itself, if they knew that, and they were saying that to the United States, what does that say about all the things that we saw here? What does that say about Fauci and the power he had, the CDC? What does it say about Biden and all the Democrats who absolutely mandated your actions? Again, I'm getting this from the United Kingdom. This is their evidence. And I'm not giving you any kind of medical advice. I'm not telling you what you should or shouldn't do. That's got nothing to do with me. That's between you and your doctor. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I can read, and that's all you need. For all the people who go, but you're not a doctor. You're not a scientist. I don't need to be. I can read. And I can read a scientific paper. I can read the opinions of doctors. I can read the materials and the evidence and the empirical data that has been presented. I can read the emails that have been released between the members of the United Kingdom's government. So to tell me, but you can't make any of those decisions. You're not an authority. I don't need to be an authority. I can read. Things that I don't understand, that's what they have dictionaries and thesauruses for. If you don't understand the word, pull up a dictionary, pull up a thesaurus, look through it, and then keep reading. The evidence is in front of us. You don't need to be a scientist. That's why they have a scientific method. Look at the data. And I am sure that at this moment, this channel is being suppressed because I have mentioned something that no one else in the mainstream media is supposed to be talking about. This was news that came out, and in the United States, they said, nope, we don't want to talk about this. In the United States, they said, nope, the American people don't need to understand that the United Kingdom lied to the public with the same messages that they said in the United States. Khan, stop. Sorry, my dog's yelling at someone in the yard. Okay. So I think it's very important that this channel, and I was watching the numbers, and the moment I started talking about the pandemic, instantly I saw that we saw a shift in the way that YouTube and their algorithms are handling this live stream. And they started to shift downwards. They started to hide this from the public. Isn't that amazing? Why don't they want to talk about the international news that affects the United States? That the very same arguments that the public were having were the conversations that were happening at the top levels of government, and the government knew that the answers that they provided to the public were wrong. They knew that when they came out with their plans for the lockdowns and not letting kids go to school and making them wear masks, that none of that was actually to the benefit of the public. And they were talking to the United States. It's just that simple. They weren't looking out for you. They were looking at political power. That's the answer you get from the United Kingdom. And that means that's the conversation here in the United States, too. And of course, YouTube will punish this channel because I've actually mentioned it. And speaking of which, Agent Black, who is a member of the audience out in the United Kingdom, just mentioned, oops, sorry about that. Hit the wrong button there, folks. Agent Black from the United Kingdom said, hey, this was knowingly wrong and criminal. Hi, Agent Black. How is today over in the UK? Thank you for joining us. I know it's 7 hours ahead of, you're 7 hours ahead of us right now. So it's about the end of your Sunday, almost time for you to go to sleep. But am I misquoting the news that has been covered by the news media in the United Kingdom? The fact that we have now seen this evidence, am I misstating it in any way, shape, or form? By the way, if you do get a chance, Agent Black, I want you to check out, when you get the chance, check out this interview. We'll see it in the comments. My interview with some of your friends out in the UK, some of the members of the UK. I thought it was a really interesting conversation. So we know, Dow says, lately the newest talking points for the media cycle is CPAC and spinning of the speakers there. China is jumping at the talk around genocide for their own propagandist purposes. I understand. I'm talking about things that no one else is. I know that CPAC's going on, and I've been to CPAC for several years. I've covered it a couple of years in a row. I understand what's happening at CPAC. But here's the stuff that no one is talking about. This is important. The whole argument about whether or not we should have a wall it's the moment that you look at what Finland is doing, the moment you look at what Poland is doing, that argument is done. When you tell me that, well, the Biden administration is doing a great job, look at what's happening in Ohio and tell me that they're doing a great job. When you're telling me that, oh, well, illegal immigration, we need an open border, and then we look at what the evidence is from overseas, and they're changing their plans, well, why are we doing this? Is some of this being discussed at CPAC? Absolutely, but not all of it. I don't think CPAC is having a big conversation about the evidence that happened this week in the United Kingdom proving that the lockdowns were wrong, because partially that involves President Trump as well. I'm not just picking on the Biden administration. The lockdowns, Trump administration, Biden administration, were wrong. We went the wrong way. The thing is, the Biden administration doubled down. They had more data, they had more confirmation, they had more conversations with the leaders around the world, and they knew they were wrong. Excuse me. They knew better than the Trump administration, that everything they were doing was wrong and was counterproductive. That's just a fact. Agent Black mentions that his government, that his government in the United Kingdom is putting up illegals in hotels. Well, I know you are. So is mine. Hang on 1 second, folks. 1 second. Sorry, cold is kicking my butt sometimes. It's not that bad. It's just a cold. It's not COVID, but it does make my nose stuffy. So, Agent Black, it's not just your government. Everywhere that we are seeing the open borders, open door policy to refugees and to illegal aliens, we're seeing this problem. I mean, we're seeing that in the United States. As an example, where is it? Some of the latest news in the United States. New York City is spending $5 million a day. This is from the same New York City officials just, 2 months ago, that the practical progressive mayor, Eric Adams, was asking for $1 billion, $1 billion, that's with a B, to be able to spend on illegal aliens who are staying at 3- and 4-star hotels in New York City, $300 to $500 a night at least per hotel room, spending $60,000 a year on these illegal aliens. American citizens make on average $35,000. He's spending $60,000 to put these people up in hotels in New York City, living a better life than New York City residents. Does that make any sense? So, Agent Black, you're correct. You're correct. This is crazy, but it's not just crazy in the United Kingdom. It's in the United States as well. And we've been covering that for many months. This isn't new. And this is happening in California. It's happening in many states across the nation, especially the bluer than blue states where Democrats have the biggest control. It's a fact. It's terrifying. And the situation is going to get worse. I'll give you an example of why. The president of France, Macron, has just come out and said, and I want you to follow the story. This is on February 27th. Macron, according to Politico, lays out a, quote, new era for France, reducing their presence. Okay, that's weird. That they're going to be reducing their presence in Africa. Now, this is very important. France used to have a huge impact in Africa. Why should Americans or people in the European Union or the United Kingdom care about Africa? Because if you believe in electric vehicles, if you believe in windmills, if you believe in solar panels, if you believe in green energy, then you have to care about Africa. Africa should be your number. If you believe climate change is the number one issue in the world, that the world's going to end in 12 years, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, when she said that and laughed because she said that was a joke. Don't believe me? Look it up. 2019. She said it was a joke. It wasn't real. That if you believed her saying that the world would end in 12 years, that you're a moron. That's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying that in 2019. Don't believe me? Look it up. But if you believe in the green energy movement, if you believe that climate change is deadly like Greta Thunberg, then guess what? You should be concerned about Africa. Because all the heavy metals, all the rare earth metals that are absolutely integral to solar panels and windmills, to the green energy movement, electric vehicles, they all come from Africa. That's it. They come from Africa. And guess what? The United States isn't in Africa. We have almost no presence in Africa. The French used to have a very strong presence in Africa, especially Northern Africa. And China is the power in Africa. They're so strong a force in Africa that we now see that France is leaving, that France is running away, which means that all of the green energy, all of the solar power, the electric vehicles are all under the control of China. China controls it all. They determine how much is going to go out in the world. They control how many batteries can be made, the price of everything. That's under China. Because France is running away. But of course, France has been trying to spin this as a good thing. On 2 days afterwards, so Politico announced that France is running away from Africa, that they're leaving all of their allies, that they're giving up to China. And then, 4 days later, France comes out and says, but it's a good thing because this is a more friendly way to deal with Africa. That Emmanuel Macron, France, they're actually doing a good thing. No, that's a spin. The reality is China won. China's taking over France. China is taking over Africa, which means they control climate change. And that's because they control how many windmills, how many solar panels, and how many electric vehicles can be made in the world. Period. That's it. They have all the control. And the media does not want to tell you that. They don't want you to draw the line and say, oh yeah, all the heavy metals, all the rare metals that are necessary for solar panels, for windmills, and for electric vehicles, they all come out of Africa. The United States has no deals with Africa. France used to have a bunch of deals. They lost them to China. China controls the heavy metals and rare earth metals for all the things in climate change. The people who control climate change is China, not the United States. And how will that work out for the future? Think about it. We are being told over and over and over again that we are doing everything wrong. We are seeing this in the news around the world, that the policies that are being presented to us by the Biden-Harris administration are failing. Not a little bit, massively. That on every level of what they have done, they have failed, and they have made the situation worse, not better. I cannot point to a single policy that has been implemented by the Biden-Harris administration that has actually been to the benefit of any one of our allies in the world. There have been several that have been beneficial to, say, Iran. A lot of the sanctions were waived by the Biden-Harris administration. That was good for Iran, not so much for women in Iran who got killed because they let their hair be seen. Yeah, but Iran, it was great for them. They got sanctions removed. We have seen how China has benefited. We've seen that Russia has benefited. But we're not seeing the United Kingdom, France, Germany, the United States, Canada, Mexico. We're not seeing any other country really benefit. You may not like this, but it is still true. The fact that the rest of the news media doesn't want to tell you this doesn't mean it's not true. Again, I'm going to left-leaning, credible sites internationally to find the news to present to you. Just because CNN or MSNBC or ABC News doesn't want to tell you doesn't mean it isn't happening or it isn't real. The rest of the world is talking about this. The rest of the world knows this is happening. It's the American media that doesn't want you to know it's happening. They don't want the American citizens to be smart enough to understand what is happening and how it's going to negatively hurt your life. They want you in the dark so that you will obey because you don't understand the consequences of what they are doing and what has happened to you. If you, excuse me, if you think I am wrong, if you think I don't understand, call in 607 242 9247. Tell me how I misunderstand. If you think that, excuse me, if you think that I am not well informed, if you have evidence that counters what I am saying, please, I would like to see that evidence. If you're a politician and you think that you have a better understanding of this than I do, fantastic, call in. The phone number is 607-242-9247. Dal, Agent Black, we had James earlier. You can call, you can leave a comment. Facebook, YouTube, send in your messages. Tell me, where am I wrong? Let me hear those arguments. I'm more than open to that. Dal says it's like an abdication. No, it is them abdicating. They have abdicated Africa to China. And in abdicating Africa to China, we have given up climate change to China. China has all the agreements. The Chinese Communist Party is now in control of the future of green energy. That is the direct and absolute consequence. Hello, hot chicks. It is good to see you. Thank you for the compliment. But that's the direct result, folks. If the last major leading nation in the world was France, that had the most involvement in Africa, North Africa particularly, but Africa overall, and if they have left, and the only other players in Africa right now that have massive influence, to be fair, it's China and Al-Qaeda. Maybe some parts ISIS. Those are the people who are in charge of what's happening in Africa right now. Victor Bout, the international arms dealer who has been funding warlords around for decades, he's in Africa. He's the guy who helped make Mogadishu the dangerous place that it is. And Victor Bout, who's Russian and supports the Russian government, has been very active in Africa, destabilizing it, making it hard for French and international forces to stabilize the region, forcing them out. And who came in? Not the Russians, the Chinese. The Chinese have been at it for decades. They were there throughout the entire time. When President Obama was ignoring Africa because he was afraid of everyone looking at Kenya and trying to connect him to Kenya, because of that, President Obama failed in making the headway that we needed in Africa to circumvent China. When he gave up Africa, everyone else walked away. France is the last one leaving Africa. China, ISIS, and Al-Qaeda are the only ones that have control there now. And they have control of all the climate change devices. Electric vehicles, solar panels, wind panels, geothermal. They control it all. Which means that in the next 10 to 20 years, not only does China have 40% of all the supplies that the United States and the rest of the world will make. They make 40% of everything. They are the manufacturing center of the world at this time. That is a fact. The United States used to be that. We're not anymore. Because, thank you, President Obama, transform America. Transform to what? To a service economy. We don't make things anymore. China makes our things. And not only are they making things, they are controlling our energy. So we cannot be energy. If you believe green energy is the answer to energy independence for the United States and the rest of the world, you just lost because China has control of it. Oh, but we have solar panels and they break down in 10 to 15 years. Every 10 to 15 years, you need to replace solar panels. Every roughly 10 to 15 years, you need to replace the blades and the windmills, if not the entire windmill. You have to replace these things about once a decade, maybe a little bit less. And that means that, yes, you have them today, but in a couple of years, all of the things that you have for green energy are useless unless you can get the metals from China. And that means they control your energy from the future, especially if we listen to the progressives, if we listen to the Biden-Harris administration, and if we stop going into the independent energy that America can make. If we're not building up, working on the gas leases and the oil, then we're reliant on solar that's controlled by China. They control energy. And if you saw that when Biden, when he signed the XL pipeline and said, nope, that doesn't exist anymore, fired 11,000 people overnight, fired 11,000 people, and the price of energy skyrocketed. It is still, to this day, up 56%, I believe it is, from the day that he walked into office. That's gasoline. Energy is up 68% from the day he walked into office. You're paying the inflation. You know what it is. 25, 35, 45% more. The cost of food, if you can get it, is more expensive. 15% of our shelves are empty. This is directly because of energy independence. See, these things are connected. And that energy independence, if you think it's bad now, imagine when China decides that they're going to slow down the number of solar panels. They're going to slow down the number of windmills or electric vehicles that can be made in the United States because they have control of the contracts. How expensive do you think things are going to get then in the European Union, in the United Kingdom, and God help us in the United States? Think about that, folks. Think about that. My head hurts. And I see Dow mentioned that while China secures the resources of Africa, at the same time, they are trying a soft invasion of the Marshall Islands and other islands in the Pacific to deny a supply chain, pushed American influence back to Hawaii. Well, that's why the Philippines, after decades of saying kick the United States out of the Philippines, they're now inviting the United States back into the Philippines. So I understand. People will say, but Mike, I don't see that. I'm trying to draw you a line, folks. I'm trying to make it as simple as I can. This is international politics. There's a lot of moving parts, but the evidence is in front of us. And if you're waiting for CNBC to tell you about it, remember, they don't want to tell you anything. They want you to obey. They don't want you informed. They want you subservient. Because who is the one who is telling you about the, case in point, the easiest thing, the train derailment in Ohio? Was NBC leading the forefront? Was CNN standing there saying, why isn't Pete Buttigieg taking care of the people of Ohio? Were they the first ones there? Was Fox News there? No. You know who's the first one there? The public. People like this channel going onto YouTube, going onto Facebook, going onto Twitter, saying, hey, there is a problem here, a big problem here. This is affecting thousands, tens of thousands of lives. The news media weren't telling you that first. The public, people just like you, said it. And because so many people in the public were saying, what's going on? Then the news media came in. And they said, well, Pete Buttigieg's taking care of it. Except, as we learned more and more, no, he wasn't. No, he never did. He's inept. He's horrible. That's why the Department of Energy stepped in to replace the Department of Treasury, because Pete Buttigieg didn't know what he was doing. It's that simple. So if you're waiting for the news media to come in and tell you the truth about something that the rest of the world already knows, that they're already looking at, that they can already see, that the news has already been out for a long time, if you're saying that, well, it can't be true because American news media didn't tell me that, you're going to be waiting forever. Because they're never going to tell you if they don't have to. Because they have an agenda. And the agenda is you obey. Don't ask a question. Don't think about it. Don't even ask a question. Just obey. Green energy goods. Full stop. Don't ask where the energy comes from. Don't ask how they make the energy. Don't ask about the rare earth metals, where we get the rare earth metals, where we get the heavy metals from. Don't ask who's digging up those metals in these mines, strip mines, that are actually bad for the environment. Don't talk about that. Don't ask that the people who are doing the mining are children. Children, not adults. Children are doing the strip mining and being poisoned by those heavy metals and dying so that you can have a cell phone because you want to have a solar panel because you want wind energy. I know it's not fair, it's not nice, but it's true. But the news media doesn't want to tell you that because you might have some kind of feeling about it, and they don't want you to have a feeling. They want you to obey. If there's anyone who's in the green movement and disagrees with me, if you are pro green energy, fantastic. You want to have this discussion? I will. Any politician or from anywhere in America at any level, local, state, or federal, would like to dispute this, I am more than happy to have this conversation. I can show you the evidence of everything that I've said, and it's true. And I am showing you the evidence of everything that I am saying so that you can understand that it is true. What's their answer? Just believe them. Their answer is believe them. They have a plan. And if you ask them, what is the plan? Don't worry, we have a plan. But what is the plan? It's a plan that they won't tell you, that they don't share any of the details on. A plan that doesn't work because there is no plan. Because you're not supposed to ask the question. They don't have to think about it because you aren't supposed to do anything. You're just supposed to obey. Which is terrifying. I hate my cold. I have a cold. It's beating me up. Now, if anyone thinks I'm wrong, I'm perfectly happy to hear anyone's opinion. If you think I missed something on this, if you think I'm wrong about this, if you think that China or Al-Qaeda aren't moving in, by the way, you're saying, oh, well, ISIS and Al-Qaeda, they have nothing to do with Africa. Burkina Faso. It's actually a country. It's a very small country, but it's a country. Central Africa. Go and ask them if ISIS and Al-Qaeda have nothing to do with Africa, that they're not having any influence. Go ahead and ask them about that as one big example. And they're not the only ones. But that's another thing altogether. And by the way, Europe is getting crazier and crazier. Anyone who's planning to take a trip out to Europe, you want to go and have a vacation in London, which I recommend. You're going to have a vacation in London. You're going to go to Paris, which I didn't like Paris. That's me personally. Keep in mind, you're going to have to pay extra money for it. That's also some news. That is out by CNN. Came out yesterday. That to go to Europe, as an American, you're going to have to pay extra money. You got to pay to go into Europe. I'm not talking about a passport. I'm not talking about a plane ticket. I'm not talking about some kind of visa. No, no, no. None of that. By the way, you're an American citizen. You don't need a visa to go to Europe or to the United Kingdom. That's not necessary. You're not paying for that. You're paying for the privilege of going to Europe. Don't believe me? Maureen O'Hare tells you herself on CNN. See, they're happy to tell you that you're going to pay more to go to Europe. They're not willing to tell you you're going to pay more because China has control of Africa. Do I care about paying a little bit more to go to Europe? No. Do I care about paying more for electricity and having less food because China controls all the energy? Yeah, that kind of pisses me off. But that's me. That's me. I don't know. Maybe I miss things. I don't know. In the meantime, going more domestically. Hang on. So let's talk a little more domestically for the United States. Well, because I've talked a bit about the international, and I hope it's clear how these international forces are affecting not just the United States, but the rest of the world. How we are interconnected in this. It's also one of the reasons why France right now is trying to run towards nuclear energy. France wants nuclear energy, not solar, not wind, but they're trying to push nuclear energy. And you have to say, well, why? France was one of the leading nations in the world on green energy. They had all the solar plants and they had wind farms. France was lead. They were shutting down their nuclear power plants. And now they want more of them? Yes, because France is getting out of Africa and they know China is moving in. China has control of the future of green energy. And knowing that, they need nuclear power plants because green energy, first of all, doesn't work. Period. Full stop. Doesn't work. Never has, and for the foreseeable future, never will. You need nuclear energy. And so that's what they're looking to do because it doesn't work and China has control. But the United States doesn't want nuclear weapons. Doesn't want nuclear power plants. Hang on, I want to show you this. Where is it? Where is it? I can't find it right now. I had an article on this. Of course, I missed it. I misplaced it. And I knew I had it. But France is moving. I think this is from the Financial Times. From the Financial Times, France mounts battle for nuclear energy in Europe. Paris is pushing the nuclear energy, but they're also the ones who are getting out of Africa because China's in there. So again, this is more of the confirmation. I want you to understand, it's not that I'm just guessing at this stuff. It's there in front of your face. It's there in front of your face. When I say that that Poland has a wall and that Finland is building a wall because they're afraid of Russia, it's not because I'm guessing. It's not because I don't know what I'm talking about. Because Medvedev, is floating an idea to take Poland's borders. Dmitry Medvedev, a deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, was speaking and said on Friday that Moscow needs to be able to have a lasting peace with the Ukraine, that the borders of Poland need to change. Poland, a NATO member. This was on February 24th. It was pronounced by Reuters. Did you hear that on CNN? Did you hear that on MSNBC, ABC, CBS, the New York Times? Did you hear them talking about the fact that Russia wants to change the Polish border, which is why Poland has a wall, why Finland is building a wall? Did you hear that? Because that's important. And Poland is a NATO member, and Russia wants to change the borders. They want Poland to lose part of its land, which is part of the reason why Poland was so hyper about getting tanks into the Ukraine, about why Poland is such a supporter of the Ukraine, because they're on the chopping block. Because Russia is actively telling the world right now that they want to take the Polish land, that the next step is taking over Poland. And they're already making actions in Moldavia, which I showed you earlier in the program. Which is why Poland knows that walls work. Finland knows walls work. And they're building their walls because Russia's saying they want to take more. But you're not hearing this in the mainstream news media. They don't want to have that conversation with you. Gee, I wonder why. All right, so we've been talking, but now it's time to talk about what's happening here in the United States. And let me ask a question. Do you want to talk about an assault weapons ban, a ban on firearms, or do you want to talk about Bill Maher? Let me ask that. Hang on. So tell me, folks. Do you want to talk about Bill Maher and what he said? Or do you want to talk about the gun ban? I'm going to get to both, but which one do you want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about Bill Maher, or do you want to talk about the gun ban that's coming? Kind of like the old gun ban, but kind of like the new gun ban. And we're being told it's going to happen. Which one would you prefer to have? Any comments out there? Because this is about you, folks. This is about what you're thinking. Dow says America should have been at the forefront of atomic energy instead of foreign powers. Well, we used to be, and then Democrats said, stop making nuclear power plants. When was the last time we made a nuclear power plant? We really don't. We don't do it because instead, what we're talking about is being a service economy. When we were a manufacturing economy, we absolutely had to control our energy. That's a fact. We had to control our energy. And we can't control our energy if at the same time that we are, we can't control our energy as a manufacturing nation if we're a service economy. Energy goes with manufacturing. They're just both tied. Okay, let's talk about Bill Maher a little bit. So I want to show you guys something. Is that okay? Sorry, just checking on my screen. So let's talk a little bit about Bill Maher. And I'm pretty sure you guys will be able to hear this. But if you don't, I have up the closed caption. And this is part of Bill Maher talking about trigger warnings. And I think this is kind of important. And he had on, what's his name? What is his name? I'll get to him. It was on his most recent show, and he wanted to talk about trigger warnings. Hang on, where is it? Now I lost my spot. Where was it? Of course, and I lost my spot there. Where is it? I think it's right here. Let me play this for you folks. Really? Is HBO pissed at me again? Well, essentially, Bill Maher this weekend was talking about trigger warnings. Remember those? Trigger warnings. As we covered recently, trigger warnings. The Muppets have a trigger warning. There's a trigger warning to see old classic movies like Casablanca. Everything has a trigger warning. You have to protect the young people of today from everything. Everything could be a trigger warning. Someone might have a feeling because they could see something, whether it's on the news or it's in a TV show or it's in a program, something from old days. It could be in a book. It's Augusta Gloop. You can't say that he's fat because that's a story about gluttony. Remember that, Charlie and the Chocolate Family last week? That they're changing the words, that you can't say fat anymore because that's a trigger warning. Someone might be triggered because you said the word fat, because Augustus Gloop is a bad guy in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. He is a moral example of someone without morality, someone who is invoking one of the deadly sins. He is a glutton. It's not, Augustus Gloop wasn't fat because he had a gland problem. It's because he was a glutton. And he was an example of what not to be, a glutton. And because of his gluttony, he was enormous. He was fat. Now that's a trigger warning. Oh my God, you can't say that. Oh my God, body positivity. You need to be body positive. You have to affirm people's fatness. No, I don't. No, I don't. First of all, it's my own feelings. I can have any feeling I want about how people look to me, just as they can have whatever feeling they want about me. Some people think I look old. Some people think I'm ugly. Some think I'm attractive. I don't care. Well, I like the attractive part. Yes, I am attractive. But, it's up to you how you feel about that. No one can tell you that someone else is attractive or not. No one can tell you how you should feel about it. But that's what trigger warnings are for. You may have a feeling that isn't approved. That's what a trigger warning is. That's what Bill Maher is talking about. That you're triggered. Oh my God, you are going to have a feeling that isn't already approved, that someone didn't give you or tell you that you should have. This is what he's upset about. And I know HBO will probably flag me for even showing this to you on Twitter. But here's the thing. It's important to understand. This is destroying our nation. And Bill Maher, who is by far anything but conservative. He is anything but right-leaning. Bill Maher is a progressive. He's a reluctant progressive. He's upset because he's a progressive. This is the same man that said he wanted to have a recession so that Joe Biden could win. He was willing to put millions of Americans into poverty just to get his political agenda. That's how much of a progressive, how much of a leftist Bill Maher is. He's not a good guy. The fact that he has regret today for what he pushed yesterday, for the things that he told people to do. He told women that the Me Too movement was not as important as Joe Biden winning an election. He said to women on May of 2020 that even though there were sexual assault allegations against Joe Biden, that Democratic women should not hold that against Joe Biden, that they must vote for him, even if they believe in Me Too, even if it's believe all women, even if it's correct that those women were sexually assaulted by Joe Biden, you had to vote for him because Bill Maher had a political opinion. He has an agenda. And today, Bill Maher is upset that his agenda, that he was willing to throw women under a bus, that agenda, that he is willing to throw everyone under a bus, that he was willing to put people into recessions and poverty for, that today he's upset about the consequences of what he pushed for, what he recommended, what he wanted to happen. And now that it is happening, he's upset. So, yes, he is correct in being upset. I don't doubt that. I agree with him. That trigger warnings is just a symbol, a reminder, an example of how weak America is becoming. He's absolutely right. But the thing is, it's exactly what he asked for. And we have covered it on this program several times. We have covered it many times on this program that Bill Maher is absolutely responsible for this. Matter of fact, I think I can show you. I want to show you, where is it? Bingo, there it is. As an example, and I'm just going to my BitChute channel.
Bill Maher on his HBO real-time show.
I just want to show you, this is from my BitChute channel, okay? This is about Bill Maher. This is Bill Maher. He's no angel, nor is he a steadfast supporter of America. This is the article I did on August 30th of 2021. And here he is today. Bill Maher is now saying, well, trigger warnings because the nation is weak. Well, Bill Maher, the nation is weak because you helped make it weak. You were the one who was throwing women under a bus. You were the one who were making the kids weak. You're the one who's pushing the progressive ideology. Yes, you're right. The consequences are all negative. Yes, Bill Maher, you're correct that this is harming America. You got it right. But you're the one who made the problem. You helped create the size of the problem. You're the guy who's been pushing for this regardless of the consequences. And now that you're living through the consequences, you go, oh, well, that's not so good. That's not really helpful. That's hurting people. No kidding. So I love this, how suddenly in the left it's like, oh my God, Bill Maher isn't a progressive. Yes, he is. Bill Maher, how could he possibly say these things? Is he becoming right-leaning? Is he becoming a conservative? No, not in hell. Hell will freeze over before Bill Maher is a conservative, sadly. But he does understand that what he's been asking for is dangerous, that it is hurting people. It is destroying our culture. It is destroying our youth. And as a consequence, our nation is falling apart. What he doesn't want to admit is he was part and parcel to that whole thing happening. That he is the cause or helped the cause to make the country weak, to destroy our youth. So I can at both sides, I can say this is great news that Bill Maher is finally realizing that he's a piece of crap and that he has hurt America. Directly, he actively hurt America. That he's finally understood the consequences of what he has done. And maybe, just maybe, because he figured it out and understands that he is part of the problem and what he has pushed is the problem, that maybe there are some Democrats out there, some progressives out there, some socialists out there that are going to stop and think about what they have done and what is the consequence of what they are doing. Not just to America, because if America is weak, the world is weak. We have gone over that for years on this channel. If America is weak, then you have North Korea, you have Iran, you have China, you have Russia going ramshod against the rest of the world. When America is weak, when there is no respect for our leadership, when we don't have a plan, domestic or foreign, then the rest of the world loses. It's a free-for-all. When no one trusts the United States because the United States is so weak that they don't believe they're going to stand up for any of the policies that are out there, any of the treaties that we have, then it's the Wild West. Japan isn't building a military because they suddenly think, oh, well, Joe Biden's going to protect us. We have the United States Army and all of the nukes of the United States going to protect us. They wouldn't build an army if they believed that. That's why they never built an army before. Since 1940, since the end of World War II, 1947, we have seen that Japan hasn't had a military, and they have had agreements with the United States to be their military for them. And now they're building a military. There's only one answer to that. The progressive ideology has failed. They do not have the trust and faith in the United States. That is the only answer there. That South Korea has no faith and confidence in the United States. That most of Europe does not have a trust and faith in the United States. That Germany had to drag the Biden-Harris administration kicking and screaming to get tanks into the Ukraine. And the Ukraine is Joe Biden's war. Joe Biden's the one who's trying to fight this war. Joe Biden isn't trying to get peace. He isn't trying to negotiate. China, who supports Russia, they're trying to negotiate a peace program. And the Ukraine is more than happy to have it. Ukraine wants to end the fighting. They want peace. They want a ceasefire. But Joe Biden doesn't. Joe Biden is fighting Russia through the Ukraine. He doesn't care about the Ukrainian people. He's not trying to support them. He's trying to attack Russia. He doesn't care what happens to the Ukraine. Other than the secrets that some of their businesses have about him and his son. He cares a little bit about that. But that's a matter of bribery. That's why we're giving them $113 billion a year to make sure their retirement, the 401ks of the Ukrainian people, are okay. Do you really think most of the people in the Ukraine have 401ks? No, they don't. Do you think most of the people in the Ukraine have retirement plans? Not really. What he's paying for is the businesses to shut up about his, Joe Biden's, private deals. Again, that makes America weak. We're not in the best interest of anyone in the world, which means it's not in the best interest of America. And when that's too complicated to understand for most people, the simplest way to explain that is we have trigger warnings everywhere. And trigger warnings is just another symptom of a weak, leaderless, rudderless nation. We have no policies. We have no plan. We have no leadership. We have no respect. Not in the world, not in our youth, which makes our country weak. It is so bad and so pervasive and so obvious that even a far leftist progressive like Bill Maher figures it out. That he can see it and he can see the consequences. And the only reason why you're not hearing about that on CNN or MSNBC or the New York Times or the Huffington Post is because it's in their advantage. They want a weak America. They don't want you to think about it. They want you to obey, whether it's this overlord or the next one. Now, if there is anyone who disagrees with me on that, I'm happy to hear what you have to say. Seriously, I am happy to hear anyone around the world, anyone in the world who thinks that trigger warnings are not a symbol and a symptom of the weakness of America. That it goes hand in hand with a leader who has no respect and has no leadership capabilities. If you think I am wrong, I am happy to hear it. Tell me why. Tell me how Bill Maher is wrong. Tell me how I am wrong. I am open to that conversation. Please do. Did I just drop? Okay. Funny thing is, folks, for all those Democrats, and there are a lot of politicians, some of them Democrats, some of them Republicans, some of them libertarians and conservatives, that watch this program. And they tell me afterwards, well, Mike, I didn't quite understand. I don't quite agree with that. I think you're off base a little bit. And yet not one of them will ever call in. It's always amazing to me that they're willing to tell me privately, I didn't think you were quite right there, and will never call in. It's amazing, folks. And I've been doing this 17 years. So let me go on. And in particular, the live streams every Sunday, 2:30 p.m., this is the 5th year that I've been doing live streams. This is season 5. This is the 10th or 11th time that I've done live streams pretty much in a row going back 5 years. And you cannot find any of the politicians calling in to ever challenge or say that this is wrong. Not that they're not watching the show, not that they don't have an opinion. They're not willing to say a damn word. But Dow says, Eastern Europeans think of money and retirement differently. I remember speaking with a man from Georgia, Soviet Georgia, that spoke about how they believe in using generated wealth for good living while they are young enough to enjoy it. I know many Soviet Georgians, and I've lived among the Soviet Georgians. I've lived in Tbilisi. They have a very different outlook on life, and they don't have such a outlook of a long life like Americans do. Dow goes on to say, Americans are encouraged to enjoy earning for a period where they will spend the majority of their wealth on medical care to sustain them to remain sedentary and comfortable. Yeah, most of Europe, many people in the former Soviet Union especially, they want to live a good life while they're alive and young, not when they're old. They expect to die younger. But again, look at what the difference is. They're former Soviet states. They've been under socialism. They've seen the impact for 75 years of what socialism and communism did to their nation and to their people. Yeah, they want to enjoy things while they're young because they don't expect to live to be old. And they know that no one's going to take care of them. The government is not going to take care of them when they get old. Americans have never had that same kind of abuse, open abuse by the government, so we have a very different point of view. It is interesting. But the money that Biden's giving, the $113 billion that we paid in 2022 to the Ukrainian government, it wasn't for retirements. That was slush money. That was bribe money. We were buying off businesses, keeping them quiet. That's why so many of the weapons that the United States has provided to the Ukrainian government so that they can fight the war are being sold in Africa right now. It's just a fact. It's just the facts, folks. But again, this goes back to the weakness of America. The very thing that Bill Maher is complaining about now. That the problem is America is weak. And he knows it's weak. And he can see how weak it is, that the trigger warnings are a great example of it, just like safe spaces at colleges are an example of it. The fact that you have the diversity and equity in America, in every aspect of America, is an example of the weakness of America. He knows it. He knows because he's the one who helped make it happen. But now that it's not good for his life, now that it's not helping him, it's hurting his life, now he wants to say, we got to stop this now. This has gone too far. Now Bill Maher wants to say, we've gone too far. It's too much. Well, Bill Maher, you're the one who did it. And you didn't care. You laughed in people's faces. Let's remember, we were covering this back in 2021. And he's like, he's going conservative. No, he just realizes what he did. And we've covered this many, many times. If you think Bill Maher is a good guy, you are being deceived. He isn't. This is regret. It's contrition. This is forced. He's not sad because you're having a rough life or that the consequences to the world are negative, that more people are dying today because of the bad policies that have been placed. He's not upset about that. He's upset that his life and his lifestyle is being negatively impacted by this because he doesn't want to see the trigger warning before he watches the Muppets. He doesn't want to see the trigger warnings when he sees a good movie. That all of them were made 30, 40 years ago. That there really haven't been high quality movies in the last 3 decades. He doesn't want that because it's affecting his life, his comfort level. And now it's a problem because his comfort is being upset, because his feelings are hurt. Well, Bill Maher, screw you. You're the one who set this up in the first place. You're the one who pushed this through. You are the one who begged for this to happen, no matter who it hurt. And you may think the rest of America forgot. I've been doing this, the live stream alone, for 5 years. I've been doing political commentary for 17 years. And I remember what you said in the past. I remember what you did. Don't try and piss on me and try and tell me it's raining. Bill Maher, you're the problem. You caused this. If anyone disagrees with me, I am happy to listen to you and hear what you have to say. I am happy to hear any other voice, whether you agree or disagree, and you will be treated with utmost respect. If you tell me you think I'm ugly, you tell me you think I'm old, I don't care. That's your feelings. It means nothing to me. But if you want to tell me that, no, Mike, Bill Maher is very serious and he has a very serious complaint because he is actually trying to change things, then let's have that conversation, because the evidence says that's not true. The evidence says that his life is now negatively impacted. He's not having as much fun as he used to have. He's not able to spend money like he used to. The consequences, the negative consequences, are starting to affect his comfort level. And that's why it's a problem now. Not because he cares about you. He doesn't. He never did. If Bill Maher cared about you, he would never have thrown the Me Too movement under the bus just so he could see Joe Biden elected. He wouldn't have said that he wants a recession so that he could get Joe Biden elected. He didn't care then. He doesn't care now. Not about you. He cares about his life. He cares about his comfort. And now that things are affecting his comfort, he's starting to realize, oh, these are bad situations. I got to stop it before it gets even worse. And he has less comfort than that. Bill Maher, if you ever want to debate this, I am happy to do so. You're a smart man. You're well educated. You're well informed. You have a huge team of people to inform you about the things that are happening. I'm one guy, and I will be happy to debate you on these issues, to hold you accountable for what you have said and what you have done. What do you got to lose, Bill Maher? I'm one black conservative. You can, what? You're going to embarrass me? Try it. I'm only going to talk about your past and what you have said and what you have done and the consequences of it. And progressives hate when you point out what they did that is now hurting people's lives, that the direct impact of what they have suggested is what's hurting people. When they said, open up the border, there should not be a border wall, there is no such thing as an illegal immigrant, well, guess what? That's resulted in how many people's lives being hurt, how much money being spent. We're spending $1 billion, $5 million a day in New York City. Let me show you that again. In New York City, according to the practical progressive Eric Adams, we are spending $5 million a day on illegal aliens living in 3- and 4-star hotels. Tell me, how much can we do in feeding the poor, in housing the homeless, in improving the quality of life of people in New York City if we weren't spending $5 million a day to put illegal aliens, criminals, in 3- and 4-star hotels. To all the homeless people, to all the poor people, to everyone who is struggling to pay their bills, for everyone who is suffering because of the inflation from the Biden-Harris administration's policies, let me ask you, is anyone in the government offering to put you into a hotel? Are they going to put you into a 3- or 4-star hotel? How about the people in Ohio, in East Palestine? Are we putting them into 3- and 4-star hotels? The answer is no, we're not. Which means they don't care about you. This isn't about helping you. This is about maintaining power. If you don't think I'm right about that, show me the evidence otherwise, because I'm showing you the evidence of what they are doing. And the evidence of what they are doing isn't to help you. They're helping illegal aliens. And guess what? If I'm an illegal alien and I know that they're spending $5 million a day in New York City to put illegal aliens in 3- and 4-star hotels, am I more or less likely to go to New York City? Am I more or less likely to be an illegal alien? You tell me. Which one do you think is true? That the illegal aliens are less likely to come to America and live in a 3- or 4-star hotel? Imagine you live in Venezuela, a country where your own government is killing your people. Venezuela, a country where measles and mumps has exponentially exploded amongst the population. That people are killing zoo animals to be able to eat. They are eating out of garbage cans. And you tell me that someone who's living in that environment with their kids, struggling to stay alive, and they find out that you could go to New York City and live in a 3- or 4-star American hotel. Which one would you prefer to live in? Which one would you want your kids to grow up in? Especially if you know that if you make it into America, not only are they going to put you in a hotel, they're going to take care of your health care, and they're going to put your kid into an American school so that they can be taught one of the best schools in the world. Which one do you want to live under? Living off of zoo animals and garbage cans? Running away from the government as it tries to kill you? Or go to America, live in a 4-star hotel with all of your health care needs and your kids going to an American school? All of it paid for by Americans. Gee, which one do you think is the better solution? Which one do you think which one is going to help or affect our immigration policies or immigration effect? Why do you think we have 5 million people who are illegal aliens right now? And you know who suggested that this should happen? Bill Maher. I don't want to hear people tell me Bill Maher is some kind of great guy, that he's doing a good thing for America. He's the reason why we have the problem in the first place. I really don't like what Bill Maher has done. That does not take away from the fact Bill Maher is a smart man. I will never doubt that. Bill Maher is a smart man. He's a very eloquent speaker when he wants to be. He has a very unique view of the world. Absolutely. I will never take that away from him. But if you want to tell me that Bill Maher is part of the solution, he's part of fixing America, I'm sorry, you haven't paid attention to Bill Maher's history and his life. Bill Maher is the problem. He just regrets it. He's regretting it ahead of everyone else because his life is now impacted. He's now feeling some of the negatives that he wanted just you to have. He didn't think it would reach him. Really upsets me. Hang on. Like I said, folks, I have a cold, so I apologize. But if you think I'm wrong, I am open to hear from anyone to explain to me how I'm wrong, how I misunderstand Bill Maher. how I have misunderstood the history and the actions of Bill Maher over many years. Or if you think that what Bill Maher is saying now is so important that it invalidates, it just wipes out all of the things he did in the past to make these things happen. Please, I'm more than happy to hear it. If you think that's the case, please tell me. I don't think that's going to happen. Because Bill Maher is part of the problem. Bill Maher is kind of like Joe Biden going out and saying that he wants to have a ban on assault weapons. What's an assault weapon? It's a machine gun. How many Americans have machine guns? Over 100,000. There's 732,000 machine guns in America right now. How many times has a machine gun been used in a crime? 4 times in American history. Let me say that again. 4 times in American history that a machine gun has been used to commit crimes. 4. That's it. 4. Modern history. 4. But he wants to get rid of assault weapons. Doesn't exist. It's not realistic. But Joe Biden is saying that he is going to, and I'm quoting him here, quote, "I know it may make some of you uncomfortable." That would be anyone who believes in the Second Amendment. That's half of America. Literally, he's talking to 165 million Americans going on. But that little state above me, Delaware is one of them, has the highest rate, one of the highest rates of gun ownership. And going on. But guess what? We're going to ban assault weapons again, come hell or high water, and high-capacity magazines. When we did it last time to reduce debt. When we did it last time to reduce mass deaths. That doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense, folks. First of all, yes, Delaware has a lot of guns. So does New York, California, Illinois, lots of states. Wyoming. Okay. But here's the thing. If you stop legal gun ownership, how does that affect a gang? I have said this many, many times. It's a very simple argument that the news media does not want you to think about, that Joe Biden doesn't want you to think about. He wants to ban legal gun ownership. What the hell does that have to do with illegal gun use? How does that stop a single gang member? They don't care if the guns are legal or not. In fact, they use illegal guns. They're not. When was the last time you heard about a gang member going out and registering their guns that they use in drive-by shootings? You don't hear about it. They don't do that. They're not that stupid. Because they don't care. Because this isn't going to stop the criminal or the criminally deranged. Crazy people don't care about laws. Criminals don't care about laws. By definition, they don't care about laws. And if any of this gun control mumbo-jumbo crap actually worked, we would have seen the results over the last 5 decades. My lifetime. They have never worked. Never. You want to look at Michigan State University, where Joe Biden wants to spend even more money. He wants to spend $231 million. Let me go back to the article. And the links will be in the description so you can see this for yourself. But one day after the shooting at the Michigan State University and 5 years after a gunman killed 14 students as well as 3 educators at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, the Biden administration announced that the Justice Department would give $231 million to states to be used for crisis intervention. The money can also be used to strengthen red flag laws and efforts to prevent gun violence. Here's the thing. They've already spent hundreds of millions, in fact, billions of dollars doing the same thing. We already had red flag laws in Michigan. We already had red flag laws in Florida. We already have these in place. It doesn't work. It will never work. Red flag laws aren't meant to stop gangs or crazy people from doing mass shootings. They're not even made to prevent mass shootings. They are made to take away guns from law-abiding citizens. Period. That's all they have ever done. Since 1999, they have not stopped mass shootings. They have not stopped suicides. Period. That is a fact. Go back to Connecticut. Ask Indiana. Look at all the research. Do you notice something about when you hear these stupid kinds of statements coming from our leaders, these elected officials, and they say, well, we're going to spend more money and we're going to pass another law against law-abiding citizens and the criminals will finally stop. They've been saying that for 5 decades, my entire lifetime, going back from the 70s to today. They have always said, just pass another law and the criminals will finally start following the law. Let's spend more money on enforcing the law against law-abiding citizens and everyone will be safe. 5 decades, trillions of dollars has been spent on this. And let me ask you, is crime down or up? Have mass shootings ever stopped? Have school shootings ever stopped? Because if you actually ask that question, if you actually look at the data, if you actually pay attention to the promises that they have always made and always make, when you are emotionally distraught, the only answer you will get is it doesn't work. Period. Let's think about this for a second. Biden is talking about the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, and the Parkland, Florida shooting. I want to remind you folks, and we covered this earlier. There's a video that we have on this. What did Parkland, Florida say when the investigation was done? They spent an entire year. What did they say was the solution? Did they say getting rid of guns would have solved the problem? No. Parkland, Florida said that the best way to protect kids in their schools were to have armed officers in the schools. And depending on the size of the school, more than one. That they would need multiple armed officers in the schools, as well as having metal detectors and closing the doors. Then they suggested that the teachers should be armed as well so that they could better protect students, at least some of them, if not all, and this would be a choice of the teachers. You notice he didn't mention that part. He's talking about, well, the red flags will protect you. Not according to Parkland, Florida. That's not what Parkland, Florida said. That's a year after their investigation. They don't believe that's true. They think he's full of crap. What they said is they need people who are armed. Guess what? This crap that he's telling you about, when I listen to Raul Mendez talking about the shooting, the mass murder that occurred in 2022, summer of 2022, that he was a victim of, and that a good guy with a gun protected him and his family and his friends and saved lives. It had nothing to do with the idea that Biden is pushing today that a red flag law will save your life. That is a lie. And you don't have to believe me. This man is the proof. Raul Mendez, right there, will tell you in his own words, and he will point out that everything that Biden is saying is going to protect you is a lie, a straight up, absolute lie. Red flag laws will never save your life. But that is something that you will hear from somebody like Bill Maher. A man who, when he goes out in public, is surrounded by armed security protecting him. Just like Joe Biden, when he goes out in public, he has armed security protecting him. Lori Lightfoot, Kathy Hochul, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Cori Bush. Yeah, Cori Bush spends $70,000. Representative Cori Bush of Minnesota. She spends $70,000 a year for private security to protect her, armed security to protect her. But you don't get to protect yourself. You can wait and see what happens. Let me go to some of the comments on this. Thus said, did you see the report? I'll see the reporting with the gangs in El Salvador. Government are treating it as Germany did after the Nazis. No gang tags, no tolerance. New Supermax prison, and no celebration of gang culture. Hard crackdown. Yes, I did see that. I did see that they were trying to create a super gang prison, just herding them all in there, and none of the, well, it's funny. Criminals around the world, they don't mind being put in prison in the United States. And you have to wonder, why are they so reluctant? Why is it not a problem for them? Because the prisons in like Russia or China, other parts of the world, they'll kill you. They are horrible. You don't get cable. You don't get 3 meals a day. You don't get the cleanliness. I'm not saying that prisons are a great place to be, but if you had to be in the Chinese gulag, a Russian gulag, if you had to be in some of the South American prisons, and you want to compare that to America, you're talking about paradise here in America. We make it too nice. So the argument can be made that what's happening in El Salvador, the Supermax prison for nothing but gang members, that could be a bad thing. It may not be the best idea, but it definitely is. American prisons aren't a better one. I can tell you that. Thus, as an argument you can make is an armed, law-abiding populace with a culture of self-defense would negate the need for extreme government action. Well, yes, I agree with that to an extent. But I think that the problem with the government isn't about whether or not they have the guns. It's about power. This is all about power. It's about who's in control. And it's about obedience. I mean, think about it. We know for a fact that the government, the Biden administration, lied to you and to me. That they literally made sure that energy, getting oil and gas, was more expensive when it could have been less expensive. And they did that on purpose to make it harder for Americans to get energy and America to be energy independent. Okay? And we know this because of the DOI Assistant Secretary Laura Daniels Davis and her internal emails that have been released to the American people. That she herself directly is stating that, and her department were saying, that the federal government could charge a royalty fee of $18.75 for the oil leases in Alaska. But they could have made it $16.67. Now, the difference between those two is it is more likely that they would have had more oil companies going after the leases at 16.67% of a royalty than 18.75. And if they had more people going after the royalty, not only would the oil and gas be less expensive, but that there would be more companies competing, and the American people would be better off. There would be more competition at a lower price, providing more energy, and America would be more energy independent. And the Biden administration went with the higher price to make sure that you were less capable of having energy, that they made the price of energy more expensive than it needed to be, with less competition, creating more of a monopoly, to be able to be less advantageous to you, the public. They screwed you. And the news is out now. Again, this is from the government's memos. The government's telling you this. That compassionate Joe Biden that we keep hearing about, I don't know where it exists. I've never seen it, and I definitely don't see it now. I don't see these things. Maybe it's just me. My cold is kicking my butt. It really is. Again, folks, 607-242-9247. At any point, anyone can call in from anywhere in the world. Tell me you think I'm wrong. Anyone in the world can call in and tell me that what they think, that I think I'm right, I'm wrong, there's something else that they want to talk about. I'm perfectly happy to hear that. It's up to you. If there's any politician that wants to try and say that I'm wrong, that I just don't understand the situation, call in. Local, state, federal government, call on in. New York State, call on in. Tell me how I'm misunderstanding this. The evidence that I am presenting to you, tell me how that is incorrect. And yet, year after year after year, they never do. The evidence is irrefutable. These are credible sources, international news sources that are providing the evidence. They just don't want you to think about it. They don't want you to talk about it. And they will do anything that they can to shut down your voice. I mean, think about it. How many people have been hearing about this? In Fairport, the Fairport Educational Alliance has now put a book in the Fairport High School, a book that emphasizes showing, well, genitalia, which some would consider that to be pornography, and trying to groom children into a sexual lifestyle, a certain specific sexual lifestyle, that they're trying to create more trans kids, that they put this book into the schools specifically to change the way kids look at their bodies and themselves and their lifestyle. And they didn't tell the parents about it. They didn't tell the parents that this was going to happen. They just did it. Where's the news media talking about that? Now, I know that the sheriff, as you can see here, the sheriff was notified about this. Like, why did this happen? Is this legal to happen? Is this appropriate or legal to have in a high school in the library? Don't know. Maybe you think it is. Maybe you think it's fine for high school students to see that. Maybe. Maybe not. But why didn't the parents know about it ahead of time? Why didn't anyone notify the parents that they were considering adding this, knowing that this is a controversial subject, that this is a controversial issue? Why didn't they justify that? Why did they just slip it in the middle of the night and didn't let anyone know? If they're so proud and if they're so confident of what they are doing to our children and to our future generations that we know that people like Bill Maher are now regretting that Bill Maher now knows he is making the country weaker. They know they are making the country less safe, less strong, less America, and this is what they're pushing into our schools. If they're so confident that this is the perfect thing to do, that this will have no negative consequences, why won't they tell anyone? Why did Fairport not tell anyone? Why did parents find this out by accident after the fact? Is that such a tough question to ask? Is it such a hard thing to consider? That if they're so sure that they are right, that they are on the right path, that that is the right thing to do, why won't they tell anyone what they're doing? Why do they hide it as much as possible? You don't have to think I'm right. But I mean, we're seeing this all over. How about this? I was talking about this the other day. Turfenstein. Did you hear about this? Turfenstein. A video game. Mate, it's a copy of Doob. And what is it? What is it? The game is all about a bunch of progressives going around killing women. Where are the feminists out there? Where is the National Organization of Women, otherwise known as NOW? Where are all these fourth, fifth wave feminists that are saying, you can't have this, that this is such a horrible idea, that we are teaching children to be violent against women because they're actually women, that they are born women, that they are genetically women. This is sick stuff, folks. Sick. I mean, and it's not just me. This is what the reviewers are saying about this half-hour long game. It's only half an hour long. The objective of the game is to kill women. They replaced a Nazi symbol with the symbol, the scientific symbol for women, their genetic symbol, XX in terms of chromosomes, and we know what that means. The developer hates women and has a fantasy of killing feminists. Wow. Hundreds of people have seen that review and found it to be important and powerful. Again, I will tell you, where is that coming from? It's coming from people like Bill Maher, and this is the consequence of them making our children weak. This is a consequence of slipping in these kinds of materials to alter the way that kids think behind the backs of parents without any notification. And what do you wind up with? You wind up with this. With games that are made purely for hate, purely to demonize a type of people. In this case, women. Women who are born women. That's it. This is the result of weak. This is a weak government, a weak education system, a indoctrination system that is being slipped in behind our backs to destroy our culture, destroy our society. And this is the result. Does that mean I hate trans people? No, I don't. Not at all. And if someone believes that is the proper step for them, that's a conversation and an action for them to make on their own as a grown adult. Not children, adults. If an adult wants to transform their body, that's on them. They have to live with the consequences of that. One, they should pay for it themselves. That's their cosmetic surgery. That's on them. I don't need to pay for that in my taxes. Two, that's their choice. They have to live with the consequences. I do not have to change my lifestyle, my point of view. I don't have to change a damn thing about me because someone else did something to themselves. Got nothing to do with me. That's on them. And they got to deal with that. And if that's a good thing for them, fantastic. If it's a bad thing for them, it sucks. But that's on them. But that's in a grown adult, not children. If you think I'm wrong, tell me why. I say that throughout the show all the time. And I'm honest. I'm telling you I'm showing you the evidence, and I'm telling you what I conclude from that. You don't have to agree. If you think I'm wrong, I am happy to hear you out. I will hear your argument. Tell me why. You want to tell me, Mike, well, you're just sexist. Shut up. That's stupid. You want to tell me I'm racist, I'm homophobic, I'm transphobic. No, I'm not. Really. I have over 1,500 videos. I have well over 1,000 hours. I've written thousands, literally thousands of articles. Find the evidence. I've been on news programs. I've talked in front of colleges. If you think I'm a sexist, racist, homophobic, anything, show me the evidence. I'm not some secret person who has no profile. I've got lots of tweets. I've got lots of profiles out there. Show me the evidence. And every time I ask that, No one ever comes up with it because it's a lie. It is meant to try and silence people. I get it. You're trying to shut me up. You're trying to scare me into silence. You want people to stay away so they don't think. But the problem America is facing and the rest of the world as a consequence is because we aren't thinking. It's because we're not facing the reality of the consequences of what we have done. And that's on multiple aspects. It's not just economic. It's not just military. It is society. It is culture. It is the future. So I'm not feeling great today. And I want to go another 15 minutes. We've been on for about 2 hours and 42 minutes, thereabouts. So I want to make it about 3 hours even on the show today. Because I do have a cold. And you may hear that in my voice. And I do have a headache right now because of the lights in my eyes. And it happens. But I want to make sure that I'm getting these things through. And again, I'm not asking anyone to just follow me, to just blindly accept what I've said. All the links will be in the description after the end of the show. You can look through that for yourself. You can tell me you disagree right now. Please tell me why. The only thing I ask for is don't tell me your feeling. I don't care if you like what I've said. I don't care if you don't like what I've said. I could care less. Your feelings about it don't matter because your feelings are no more important than my own. If you don't feel like you like what I have to say, I could care less. I have my own feelings. I don't need yours. The same thing goes the other way. You don't need my feelings. You have your own. I respect you have a feeling. And you can have whatever feeling you want. I don't care because that's your feeling. It has nothing to do with me. And we are building up this huge society, which now we see Bill Maher and some of the far left are starting to say, well, this may not be a great idea to emphasize on relative truth, my feelings. I could care less. And you shouldn't care either. You shouldn't care about that because there is no such thing as my reality, my truth. That doesn't exist. There is reality. There is the truth. And you can have whatever feeling you want about it. But your feeling about it has nothing to do with anyone else. No one else has to have your feeling. Feelings aren't approved. They're something that you have. Period. You have a feeling, and you can have that feeling any way you want. But no one else needs to have your feeling. No one else must be obligated to have your feeling. And if you're trying to force your feeling onto someone else, that's a crime. Agent Black mentions the WHO drew V passports. Meeting ends Friday. Some of the items in there are very scary. Well, what's a Draught 5 passport? I don't know what that is. But I'm sure there is. There's a lot of information that's happening in governments around the world. It's very scary. And we need to be honest with each other. We need to be open and forthright about draft. Okay. WHO draft passports. Okay. We need to be open and honest with each other. And that's the only way we can control our governments and these organizations like the WHO, like the CDC, like the WEF, the WEC. We need people to have oversight. The only way you can stop these guys from abusing their power, and they are abusing their power, and the only way we stop them from doing that is if we actually ask a question. If we actually stand up and say, you know what? No, I don't think you can do that. I think you've gone too far. Justify why you are doing this. Because when we don't do that, when we don't ask them to justify their actions, when we don't try and figure out what they've been doing, and we just let them go willy-nilly wherever they want to, well, that's when we wind up finding out that they have gone, where is it? I had this article. There it is. And that's when we find out that these governments, these agencies, these political figures have gone around and abused their power. That they have been that they've been having a conversation in the background where they know what they are telling us is a lie, where they know that what they are suggesting is made up crap, that it will not work, that no one is being helped. 100,000 messages. And if that's what happened with the United Kingdom's government, I guarantee you that was the conversation being had in Germany, in France, in Canada, in Mexico, the United States, and everywhere else in the world except China, except North Korea, except Cuba and Venezuela, the socialist communist nations. They didn't have a conversation because there is no conversation. People don't get a choice. But every nation that has some level of freedom, some level of choice and independence for its people, yeah, every one of them, you need to ask questions. Because otherwise we find out months later, years later, oh, the government knew they lied to us. They lied to our faces. They just didn't think you'd find out. They didn't think they'd get caught. And of course, they're always sorry after they get caught. They're always apologetic after it's already affected your life, after you've already lost your job, after it's already hurt your family, after the side effects have already taken its impact on you. Hi. Sorry, puppy's acting up. Sounds like someone's at my door. Could be the police, I don't know. Not that I've done anything illegal. But that's the culture that we live in today. That is a consequence for talking about the truth. Not my truth, not relative truth, the empirical truth. Again, I'm not making stuff up. I'm showing you the evidence. This is coming from the Associated Press. And I guarantee you that if the United Kingdom was lying to its people, the United States was lying to its people on the very same issues. And we know that they did. That's why we know the FBI and the Department of Energy say that the Wuhan virus came from a Wuhan lab. It wasn't natural, it was man-made. Something that we got punished for years. But yet, turns out to be truth. That's what the FBI says. That's what the Department of Energy says. And for years, I was not allowed to say that. Why not? Why not? Why was I not? People are saying, think about it, folks. The government is more than happy for you to be able to say that Bigfoot is alive, that mermaids exist, that the world is flat. They are absolutely, you hear that from the government and social media, YouTube and the rest. You could go all day talking about the world's flat and Bigfoot and mermaids and aliens. You can talk all you want about that. But you cannot speculate that the pandemic came from a lab made by men in a communist country. That is going too far. That's too much. That's dangerous. How? How is it any more dangerous than saying Bigfoot is alive or saying that the world is flat? If it weren't true, how does it endanger anyone? If it is true, then it's important that we talk about it. But see, that's the thing. We're in a society now, you don't talk about these things. You can't say Augustus Gloop is fat because he's a glutton. You can't say that. You should say that. It's important to say that. There is an important message behind saying that. But we need trigger warnings. We need trigger warnings because someone's feeling might get hurt. Well, what about the feelings that don't? What about my feelings? I'm not hurt. It doesn't hurt me to say maybe the government isn't working efficiently and effectively. It doesn't hurt me to ask the government for an actual plan, to lay out its plan, its policy, so that I can evaluate their actions. It's not a problem for me. I am not hurt by saying that inflation has gone up almost exponentially under the Biden-Harris administration directly as a consequence of their policies. That's not changing the policies. It's not changing inflation. It's just pointing out the truth. It doesn't hurt me when I point out that Bill Maher is a effing hypocrite. That he's the part of the problem. He created the problem. Doesn't hurt me. Oh, I know what. I promised, or I mentioned, that I'd talk about Chris Rock. And I have it here somewhere. Where is the Chris Rock thing? I did say before I would end the show, I was going to talk about Chris Rock. And I had it in front of me. Had it. All right, let's go back to. Hang on one, folks. Okay, while I search for this here, I had a specific thing I wanted to show you. So, did you see the Chris Rock comedy show? I don't know how many people did or didn't see it. I saw it. I saw it last night. And that's saying something because I hate current TV. I really do. I think it's absolutely abysmal these days. And is it on Instagram? It is. There we go. And I have it on Instagram too. I want to show you this. Yeah. So, here's the thing. Chris Rock. I think one of the best parts of the Chris Rock comedy show was this skit that he did. Oh, yeah, he had a lot of truth bombs come out. And for people who aren't noticing, Dal's asking, were there some truth bombs? There were. And one of the biggest ones that I saw is something that you can't see now. On Instagram, they have blocked this. They have limited this in most countries. They have already sent me the message that they will not let people see this clip. Why? Because the punchline wasn't that Chris Rock is saying that he's pro-abortion. It's because he said that abortion is killing babies. They don't want people to see Chris Rock say that abortion is killing babies. And that was the joke. The joke was people thought that he would say, I'm pro-abortion. That they're so brainwashed to separate the word from the result. That he's talking about the freedom of his kids, but he's also talking about killing babies. And he made it very clear. And the audience didn't know what to do. Some were clapping, some were muted. They didn't know what to do because they couldn't coincide the very thing that they were applauding for. Oh yes, women have every right to abort babies. They have every right to kill babies. And that's one of the things I thought was really great about this. And it's because I actually showed this and just said, you know what? He's just telling the truth. Because I showed that on Instagram, it's been blocked almost everywhere in the world. Now, at the moment, a shorter version of the same thing on Twitter is not blocked at this moment. And it's just that he's saying the truth. That if you have to pay, his words, if you have to pay for an abortion, you should have an abortion. that man is obviously not worthwhile. But it's interesting to me. Chris Rock is getting demonized, and everyone is trying to focus on his comments about Will Smith. And I think his comments about abortion were so much more powerful and so much more important. And I think the joke was on the abortionists, not anyone else. He wasn't making fun of people who believe in pro-life. He was making fun of the people who don't believe in pro-life, who are in favor of killing babies. They were his punchline. They were the joke. See, the difference between the difference between Chris Rock last night and Bill Maher has created the environment where weak men are being accepted by women and trying to knock up those girls, getting them pregnant and leaving them on their own. And that's been supported by society. That's the thing that Bill Maher supports, which hurts America, it hurts the world, it hurts people. And Chris Rock is calling it out. Gee, which one is the better person there? Bill Maher is getting lauded. He's being held up as a hero. Chris Rock, people are picking on him because you can't say that. That's so mean. Yeah, it may be mean, but it's true. The joke may be on the people who are killing the babies. He's making fun of them, but he's right. You may not like it, and I'm not telling you that you have to like it. I'm not telling you that you should laugh at it. Some did. Many did. But think about what you're laughing about. It's amazing that comedy can sometimes point out the things that no one can talk about, that no one is willing to be, everyone's afraid to be called out for. Fact is, he's right. It's just that simple. And it's honest and it's true. And it's better than people like Bill Maher who are pushing the problem, and then once the problem affects him, then it's a bad thing. We see that so often from progressives and from politicians. It's only a problem when it affects them. But if it's affecting you, it's okay. Yeah, no problem. It's all good. I do recommend people to see the Chris Rock special. Mind you, I'm not telling you to pay Netflix to be able to do so. If you have the ability to watch the Chris Rock special without paying for Netflix, I think that's a great idea. But I do suggest that if you have the opportunity, go see the special. It was done in Baltimore. And there's a lot more to it than just Will Smith being embarrassed because he attacked Will Smith. And there should have been an actual criminal investigation. Will Smith should have been arrested. But Will Smith is a progressive. Will Smith is part of Hollywood. Will Smith is a celebrity. So he didn't get arrested, even though there were several million, tens of millions of people witnessed his assault. It's a crime. And again, I go back to, it's people like Bill Maher who make this two-tier system where it's okay to see violence on national TV, to see people go out and break the law. It's okay if they're the right political preference. Bill Maher helps to create that environment. How's anyone benefiting from that? I mean, that's the way I say it. Yeah, it's funny. Ha ha. Ha ha. Chris Rock very emotionally talked about what happened a year ago. And that he got embarrassed. And he got to be very honest and say, yeah, but Jada Pinkett has completely destroyed Will Smith. And Will Smith will probably never recover from it. Will Smith is more damaged than anything that happened to Chris Rock. And he made it funny and he laughed and he made sure you remember he's a comedian. He can get you. He can always come back to you. You are always his fodder. Yeah, Will Smith hit him and he hit back. And, Chris Rock's getting paid to hit him back. Chris Rock's he's making headlines. He's making his life better by hitting back without using physical force. There's a lot of lessons in this. But I think the part that's being missed, and this is me, having watched it once, watched the whole thing once, I think it was a decent comedy show. Chris Rock has had better ones. He's had worse. But he's had better ones. Some of his jokes, dead on the money. I'm talking about everything except the Will Smith stuff. The rest of his routine. He had some very funny stuff. And more often than not, Chris Rock is a political satire comedian. He makes political jokes. And I think he hit the nail on the head. Most people don't realize that. Most people don't think of him in that way. He's a political satirist. He always has been. That's the thing that he's always done. And I think he did a very good job most of the show. And you're not going to hear about that in the news media. They're going to talk to you about Will Smith because they don't want you to think about abortion. They don't want you to have to come to terms with killing babies. Chris Rock did. He took a risk. He went there. He made his statement. Some people laughed. A lot of people didn't know what to do because they had to think about it for the first time in their lives. That's a good political satirist. But, you'll never hear about that. Only thing you're going to hear in the news, Chris Rock made Will Smith look bad. Will Smith made Will Smith look bad. The cover-up and the excuse-making by Hollywood for Will Smith made Will Smith look bad. There's more to it. And again, it's all about, where's the focus? Is it about getting you to obey? Or is it about getting you to think? Chris Rock made people think. Now the media wants you to only focus on, the funny, obey. At least that's how I saw that. Maybe you think of the comedy skit differently. And for those who haven't seen it yet, see the whole thing. It's an hour. It's worth it. I wouldn't sign up for Netflix for it, and I don't recommend it. I don't support Netflix. I didn't pay to see it. I won't pay to see it. But I did get to see it. But that's me. I don't know. Maybe someone else thinks it was horrible or doesn't think it was funny. The tweet and the Instagram have been basically blocked around the world. So I would say, well, I could go by the way people react to it, but the social media won't let people see it. I don't know why. Think about it. Instagram refuses to let people to see this video. Twitter is restricting the people who can see it. Doesn't that feel a little bit like what we saw during the pandemic? They refused to let people have a conversation. And 6 months later, 2 years later, 3 years later, we find out all the people who were trying to have the conversation were right. Tells you something. All right. So let me ask, Is there anything that anyone else wants to talk about? Anything that's on your mind? I know we talked a little bit about Chris Rock. We talked a little bit about Bill Maher. We've talked about illegal immigration. We've talked about the U.S. economy, banning guns. We've talked about what's happening in Moldavia, how Europe is falling apart. We've talked about the consequences of the lack of foreign policy, which is very important. I talked a little bit about, and I remind everyone that please check out, and I think it's important, check out Raul Mendez and what he had to say about being a survivor of a mass shooting. And I want you to compare his discussion about how a firearm saved him, how a good guy with guns saved him and his family, and how Biden is telling you that doesn't exist. Please watch this video. It's not even my video. This is the Liberty First Foundation. It's a roundtable I'm part of. I think it's powerful to hear what this man survived. And you can take the lessons from that all you want. I want you to take an opportunity. Listen to the conversation with Caleb Slater. Why is he fighting against a satanic club in Endwell in Broome County when he's running for office in Onondaga, in Syracuse? Why did he find it so important? Why is he the only politician or political candidate that's willing to cross the artificial political boundaries to come to another county to stand up for what he believes? I want you to listen to his words about that. Check that out. And absolutely, please take a moment to listen to me talking in the United Kingdom, answering questions from residents, citizens of the United Kingdom, talking about America, asking about what they are seeing in the news, what they are hearing from our politicians, about what their questions are about life in America and how it's affecting them directly. Please check these out because I think they're important. Dow says, just a little bit about focusing on tools and materials instead of the human element when it comes to making policy. Yeah. There's so much conversation that's... Oh, hang on. Hello, and thank you for calling into the program. Oh, wait a minute. I think we have someone there. Caller, can you hear us?
Yep, hear you.
All
It's
right.
Dal.
Hey, Dal, what's going on?
Well, I was just going to address my comment. A lot of news in the cycle about 2 days ago about Jon Stewart talking with a representative about gun control, and just yesterday there was a talk about Matt Walsh at CPAC.
Yeah.
And his vocal support for the Kansas legislation that says that under legal pretext, if you are going to you want to access the rights and privileges of a woman, that you have to first prove biological femininity. And the way these two subjects tie in together is that the latest spin has been focusing on, well, people have been dressing in drag for centuries. Well, how are you going to ban women's clothes? And it's the same argument as, people have been killing each other for centuries. How are you going to ban people from killing each other? And they focused entirely on the materials. It's like gun control is guns, and this idea of gender is focused on clothing. And it's like, no, that's a disingenuous argument.
Yeah.
You have to look at the behavior of how these things are used by the people that use them. It's true. The actors have been dressing up as women to play female parts for years for various reasons.
Oh,
You
well,
have
millennia.
transvestites.
They've been doing it for millennia.
Yeah,
The ancient
you have
Greeks.
transvestites that will dress in women's clothes for various reasons. But that doesn't mean that they're going out and using them for nefarious purposes. Like this idea of the ideology of transgenderism that is not necessarily pushed by trans people, but rather by largely activists for a social reason, a societal engineering reason, has caused a lot of schisming in society. It's destructive, and that machination, that big machine, needs to be dismantled, amongst others. But the way it ties into gun control is the same focus on material and tools. Everybody talks about, well, the uh, the example I want to use is Jon Stewart's interview. He says to the representative, who I can't remember his name now. It's John something or other. I'll have to look it up again. Um, but during the interview, he says, "Well, Republicans wanted to stop drugs, so they attacked the supply. Why would they not use the same um, mode to attack guns by controlling the supply or eliminating the supply?" And it's because they weren't attacking the supply. Maybe the drug war is, but that's not the way to get rid of it. You have to attack the distribution, the people that are involved in shipping those drugs. The supply being limited or eradicated, it just as a byproduct of stopping the distribution, which is done by people.
Well, to interject, you're no matter how much you affect the supply, if there are still addicts, there's still a problem. You'll never get
Correct.
rid of the drug war. The problem, one of the biggest problems of the drug war is that you still have addicts. And as long as you have
Right.
more addicts being created, you're always going to have a drug war. China had the same problem when it was trying to deal with opioids because
Right, the opium wars.
the opium wars, because they had more and more addicts. Doesn't matter. You'll always have someone willing to fill the demand. The supply is never equal to the demand. There's more addicts than there are drugs. So the problem
Right.
isn't the drugs, it's the addicts. Am I understand that right?
Yeah, and that's too. That's the other side of that. That whole argument with the limitation of supply is that as long as there's a demand for it, it's going to be filled. But then that's also how you take care of the distributors. So this idea of, well, we can just discount the human element and just make policy limiting the material doesn't eliminate how it's used by the receivers and by the distributors. You can't stop a criminal from committing a crime because a crime happens in the moment. The same thing goes with drug use. It happens in the moment. Normally when police show up or any kind of enforcement shows up, it's after the fact, so that you have to go through, and if people survive the moment, then they have a punishment that follows, or disciplinary action or whatever. This is why ostensibly the left's argument for things like gun control and how we view society is so skewed because they take away the actions of the individual that's perpetrating the crime and focus entirely on the means by which they committed that crime.
Well, there.
And
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, it's not supposed to make sense because you're not supposed to think about it. You're supposed to obey. When Joe Biden says, "I'm going to put in a gun ban in Delaware and I'm going to put one in around the nation," you're supposed to feel safe. And you're supposed to say yes because you want to be safe. You're not supposed to think about, but that's never worked before. It's never worked in 5 decades. And this isn't the first, it's not a new idea. It's not like no one's ever tried this before. They've tried it many, many times in many states, many cities. They've tried it on a national level. It doesn't work because it doesn't address criminals don't care about laws. Law-abiding people might be affected, but that doesn't help them. In fact, in many cases, it hurts them. But you're not supposed to think.
Right.
You're supposed to just say, "I feel safe," and say yes.
Right. But I think it's a disingenuous argument when you remove the actions of people, and you don't enforce. The other part is enforcement. You don't enforce the crimes that are the
The
not
laws.
crimes. You don't enforce the laws that already react to the crime, and you just let them go on their own recognizance. Nobody in their right mind is going to stick around for a punishment if they think they can get away with it. That's why you had bail. so that if you jumped, there would be people following you.
You were going to still be punished, and the punishment would
Right.
be worse. That's what the idea of bail is. But of course, we're hearing that it doesn't match the feelings based movement. Everything in the progressive movement is all about feelings, it's about how you feel, which is a great way to disguise what's actually happening, what's the impact and the effect. And that's why they focus on feelings. Because if you're busy
Right.
feeling something, you're not thinking about it, you're not considering the consequences, you're only absorbed in that moment. That emotion has captured you, and you're not considering consequences, which is why they
Correct.
can then push for no bail, which is why they say attack law abiding citizens, not the criminals, and punish them. Because it's about that emotion, not the consequences. The consequences are, well, as Bill Maher mentions, well, America's weak. We have a whole generation of people who are weak. And that's not good for anyone in the world, as we can see
And not
happening.
only that,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, not only that, the law abiding are an easy target because they are going to stick around. Like unlike a criminal that would immediately think, well, you know what, I got out and I have a little time, I'm going to try and keep running. The law abiding don't think like that. They worry about being thrown in jail. They worry about punishment. They worry about discipline. And the more you take away their ability to handle situations on an individual level, the easier the target is when you bring a system against it.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same with the red flag laws.
No, it's
Like
very
when
much
you
like
had the
that.
when you had the red flag laws, it was an idea to have a chilling effect on the law abiding, because it was like, well, for any reason, you are suddenly going to be faced with a punishment whether you committed a crime or not. We think you did, so you're now guilty until proven innocent,
Well,
which
it's not
is a
even that
very high bar.
red flag laws aren't about whether or not you committed a crime. Red flag laws are about someone felt upset. You upset someone. And that's all that's all you need is the feeling
Right.
of danger, the feeling of discomfort is enough to punish you. There is no crime. Red flag laws have nothing to do with laws of crime, which is also why they have nothing to do with protecting people, because that's not what they're there for. They're there to punish you for having, to causing a feeling. That's insane.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to bring that up because I had seen that recently, and that's something worthy of discussion. We need to have that discussion where we take the focus off of the material or the tool and we put it back on individual actions and hold those individuals to account.
Absolutely. I think that's absolutely important. And it's one of the reasons why I said earlier people should check out the Liberty First Foundation Roundtable when I had the
Yes.
conversation. Because Raul Mendez, this man, 7 people died. The police showed up after everyone died, after all the shooting was done, after all the bullets were fired, and some people were dead and some people were wounded. After the whole thing ended, then the police showed up. And that's
Right.
almost always how it happens. It's very rare for police to actually show up in the middle of the commission of the crime. It's almost always at the end. Even when it comes to when we see mass shootings, overwhelmingly, they always tell you the first minute to 3 minutes are the most deadly times. The first minute is the most deadly. The next 2 minutes are incredibly deadly. And after that, usually the mass shooter either commits suicide or they run out of bullets and then they get captured. It's not because they stop because they run out of bullets or they're dead. And that's when the police show up after that 3rd minute. When that person is either out of bullets or when they're already dead, then they start to engage. That's almost always the case. That is the overwhelming majority. So,
Which then lends itself to the argument that in order to be truly safe and mitigate risk, not eliminate it, mitigate, you have to have people that are first responders on site in that first minute to prevent mass loss of life.
that's impossible. It's impossible. You can't have a policeman at everyone's door. You can't have them at every mall, every store, every school, every event in the public. It's not possible.
What I mean by first responder, though, is that the citizenry that are involved in that moment become the first responders, which is why the idea of having uh, a trained populace in their own self-defense is a very strong argument for mitigation of risk.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why the Second Amendment was created.
Right, and it seems that no matter how much evidence you present for that side of the argument, the louder voice is always, well, we need to eliminate the tool, we need to eliminate the material, we need to eliminate the somehow there by doing these things you're going to eliminate the pool by which people can curb their actions, and that's not how it works.
Well,
People will act always.
well, you know why the voice is louder to say, well, just get rid of the weapon? Because it sounds easy and it feels safe. Because it's the feeling. And because you're caught up in that moment of that feeling. Because if I say, well, we need a law that's actually going to punish the criminals or prevent criminals from creating that law, taking that action, well, that involves work. We have to figure out, well, what are the motivating factors that cause crime? How do we punish them in a way that would prevent future crimes? What can we do? We have to be involved, and we have to work at it, and we have to make mistakes, and we have to write up laws, and we have to have this discussion, and it's probably uncomfortable for some people, and it won't work for everyone. Some people will still die, but that's a process. See, and that involves thought, and it involves questions, and it involves action. It's hard.
Right.
Feelings are easy.
And that's kind of how it ties into transgenderism as well. The ideology is the fact that it isn't the fact that there are people that like to behave trans. It's the fact that there are people that want to subsidize and promote to future generations who really don't have any skin in the game necessarily. If you want to have a community like that, that's something that needs to be organically grown with people that are able to exercise their own choices.
But it was.
Not push it on people. Yeah, but what I'm saying is now is what's happening is that they're trying to avoid using grooming.
Well, no, it's a grooming.
They're promoting this community under the guise of tolerance and exposure, but really what ended up happening is it's a societal detriment because it causes confusion.
Well, Dal, this already is getting suppressed. This video is the live stream always gets suppressed every week. So I'm not worried about that. It's called grooming for a reason. And and I'm showing it on the screen. The problem with what happened in Fairport, as one example of many examples at Fairport High School, is that they're putting in these documents to groom kids, to change their mentality, to increase the fad, affecting people who probably would never otherwise be affected because they're not thinking about the consequence that when you do that, you wound up with Loudoun County, where you have a certain number of people who will abuse that system and will harm individuals because of it. And no one wants you, they don't want you to think about that connection, that because you are playing to the feelings of a political organization, not trans people, the political trans movement, which has nothing to do with the people, that you're going to create individuals who will abuse that system that's been there. Because criminals abuse the system. Always have, always do. And that's why we get things like Loudoun County. I've known many trans people in my life, probably statistically more than most human beings will ever see in their lifetime. I know trans people. Statistically, the numbers are just off the charts comparatively. And here's the thing. That was a decade ago, 2 decades ago, maybe 3, that I've known these people, and they were just living their life. They're not the ones who are out parading and forcing themselves onto children in terms of the ideology. They're not the ones who are out there doing what Loudoun County is. They were living there. They every single person I know that is trans in my life has never once wanted a spotlight on them or their lifestyle. They just want to live. And they
Right.
just want the respect of being them living. And I have no problem with adults living. I have a problem when you're turning around and sneakily going behind people's backs and you're trying to groom children
Hmm.
who don't know what, they don't even know what they don't know. And you're trying to groom these kids, and that inevitably leads to what we have in Loudoun County. That's the problem I have. Stop going
Yeah.
after the kids. Leave the kids alone.
Mm. No, I agree. I agree, and it's something that, unfortunately, like you and I have said before, is these types of discussions are very necessary for a society, especially one that values individual liberty. It needs to be had, but we're being suppressed,
Well, we are being
and
suppressed. Yeah.
because it's uncomfortable, because it makes people feel yucky, and it's like you can't just ignore the consequences of bad behavior.
But they
And
want to. I mean, it's like with Chris
right,
Rock. He made it part of his joke. Everyone was clapping and happy when he said, "Oh, I support women's rights," and they were all clapping. The whole room uproar. They're just so happy to hear him say he supports women's rights. And then he
mhm,
finished the punchline, which is to kill babies. And all of a sudden, they didn't know what to do because you had to
right,
think, oh, wait a minute. What we're talking about is killing babies. And he made it very clear. He's like, no, and there's no way around it. It's killing babies. Now they suddenly go, oh, I don't know what to do. And because I'm trying to show people that clip around the world, it's been blocked on Instagram
yeah, and
and
the other
Twitter.
part of that context, though, too, I saw the same clip. The other part of that context was, now don't pick weak men to make babies with, and you won't have to have the abortion.
There you go. And again,
That was the other part of the context, was like, stop making bad choices, and you won't have to kill babies.
yeah, which is one of the best pro life statements I've seen. And he did it as a comedy, as a joke.
Hmm.
And people are like, we can't talk about that. We can't
Right.
talk about that part. No, 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 because that's political. He's a political satire comedian. Of course,
Yeah.
yes, we can talk about it and we should talk about it. Whether you agree with it or not, that's on you individually. But again, it's the same thing about what we're seeing with trans and what we're seeing with gun control. We're being told how to feel so we don't think. And
Right.
that's a problem for any free society, whatever the degree of freedom. If you're so focused on feeling and not thinking, you will be abused. Absolutely. Every time.
And that comes down to education as well. And John Locke had a famous quote. He said that education begins a man, but reflection, good company, and reading, reading, reflection, and good company finish him. And the meaning of that is that you have to give yourself the ability to learn and think. Otherwise, you're going to be abused. That was his point.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I think we've lost is this idea that because feelings allow people to be manipulated so much easier than logic, that we have several generations of people that just don't want to think. It's too hard. It's too uncomfortable.
And that
And so you're not getting any solutions. You're just getting promises from people who do think they do know what they're talking about, but they have an agenda that goes contrary to actual liberty, which liberty in and of itself, in proper exercise, requires you to be at least somewhat knowledgeable about the where you live, and
Dal,
what your rights are.
you're being too kind because as we see with the United Kingdom, they knew they were wrong. They knew
Yeah,
they were abusing people's freedom. They knew that the lockdowns would hurt people more than the pandemic itself. They knew this. They had 100,000 private conversations about it, and they hurt the people anyway because feelings make people docile. They made them
right.
subservient. and that was more important. And we can't
And what do you
talk
call
about that.
Like what do you call that at its base?
Authoritarianism.
Right, which essentially is evil. These people knowingly manipulated their populace because of the seeking the power and control systems that they want from a bygone age that hasn't been seen since, well, outside of dictatorships, since the 14th century.
Yeah, which is
It's ridiculous.
we've moved back to, we are living in a modern feudal society. We have gone
Yeah,
back to
I
neo
agree.
nobles and serfs, and we are the serfs, and the politicians, more and more, are neo nobles, which is why they're in office for 50 years at a time.
Yeah, and that's not right. I don't think that should be something that happens. I like the fact that President Trump actually, well, former President Trump, his planks, two new planks popped up for his campaign. One of which was term limits. He was going to push for term limits for Congress. No, I don't think he's actually going to be able to manage that.
No.
Because that's like asking them to give themselves a pay cut. So
Yeah.
that's never going to happen.
No.
But it is something where I believe that if enough people at the local or state level start to insist on amendments for term limits for their representatives, eventually it might bleed upwards and get to the point where this is how it runs. This is the system, and the federal government needs to fall in line. But until people start taking back control of their local and state governments, you're not going to see that happen. And in order to do that, you have to be educated. You have to be able to think about your liberty, about your rights, and how important they are to you. Because safety, security, that idea is the other end of a spectrum from liberty. Like, liberty means that you are responsible for pretty much everything. Your safety, your security, everything.
Mhm.
If you give up that responsibility and hand it over to another, then you're looking at possible abuse in the interests of that other person or system.
Well, you turn
And
yourself into a slave.
right. And I was talking with Dom LaCure, and he's an influencer on Twitter that worked in the music industry for a little bit.
Mhm.
And he had a thread on Twitter that was about the myth of the switch between Republican and Democrat parties,
Uh-huh.
where the Democrats supposedly went over to the side of civil rights because they had seen the error of their ways and moved away from slavery.
Bullshit.
And what it was is that it wasn't that they switched. It's that the Democrats realized that there was a better way to commit it, and it didn't have to stay with one race. They could do it to everybody, and
Oh, shit.
that's how they influenced the system. So now you have a whole bunch of people that are dependent on these governmental systems that are willing to give up all of their rights and become the subservient to the government, as opposed to the government being subservient to the people. And that mindset, that culture has to change if anything is going to be remotely like what the framers built in the Constitution.
Well, remember, we're being told, or our kids are being taught, that the Constitution is evil, or the framers were
Right.
evil, because it's to stop them from saying, but the system is right. I'm not saying that any of the founders were saints. They weren't. Then again, no one is. That's why saints
Right.
are so rare. That's why it's such a big deal. Whatever religion you may have, there's very few people who are actually considered holier than the masses. Why? Because the masses aren't holy. I'm not saying that any of them were. We have no perfect
Right.
system of government that has ever been created on the face of the earth. But the best we have ever seen is what we found in our Constitution. The proof is what we
Right.
have done since we have existed as a nation. We've saved the world from autocratic dictatorships twice. We have improved the quality of life around the world more than anything has ever happened before. There is no other nation that has improved the quality of life of everyone on the planet as much as we have. And we have
Right.
the best quality of life, dollar for dollar, person for person, compared to anywhere in the world, including the Swiss nations that everyone likes to point to, Switzerland. No, we have a better quality of life for more
Yeah.
people on an average at less cost. No one's done it as well as we have, and they want to throw that away because it feels wrong. Because a small political
Right.
group of elites want more power.
And
And
it was because the founders realized that people weren't perfect that they put so many checks and balances into the framework in the first place. I mean, you have the I really think that if the listeners want to really understand what it is to be a citizen or really want to understand the Constitution, I've recently gone into Hillsdale's
mhm,
free constitutional course. It's Hillsdale College.
yeah,
Look them up.
they're good.
It's fantastic. It lays out everything for you, and you follow along, and you think they get you to they ask the questions that get you to think about what it is about your liberty that is important and why you should be a part of it, why you should exercise it, and that to me has been. I've done my own studies, but that to me has been the most rounded, well thought out argument for personal liberty that I have yet to find. I mean, Liberty First, we do a great job. I
Hmm.
like Mark Marshall a lot. But I think that people would definitely benefit from a more formal discussion that's focused solely on the constitutional framework and the information that's contained therein.
Right, they both have
It's just
different
phenomenal.
aspects. They have different aspects that they target. Liberty
Right.
First Foundation is fantastic for what they're targeting. Hillsdale is a more formal education. That's also good. Uh,
And there's also one on citizenship, which I'm going to take next because that I know I'm a citizen, but I don't know what that entails necessarily in its entirety. And if the constitutional lessons are any indicator, I think I'm going to greatly benefit from taking the citizenship course as well
the
because
res-
that'll
you,
help.
oh yeah, you'll be amazed by the responsibilities of a citizen, and
Yeah,
as well as the benefits. But it comes with responsibilities. Part of that being self-reliance. Part of that being a reliance to your community, and to give up some of
hmm
your freedoms to that community. Which how far the extent goes, and how responsible you are for what liberties are given up. We are part and parcel responsible. It's like, as an example, when I was talking about Bill Maher. And Bill
right,
Maher is a bad guy. There, in my mind, absolutely, Bill Maher is a bad guy. He's being lauded like, ooh, he's such a soothsayer. Look at him. He's predicting. No, he's the reason why we have the problem in the first bloody place. He's the
right.
cause of this very same problem that he's now complaining about.
hmm
Uh, and that's
I think the same could be said about John Stewart as well. I mean, and it's funny
to a
that these
lesser
guys are
extent.
both
To a lesser
these
extent.
guys are yeah these guys are both like night show talk hosts, but they're both fairly intelligent. They're
Yes.
very eloquent when they speak, but they they're more willing to view America. I think this is my opinion that they're more willing to view America as a collective rather than collective society, as opposed to seeing it as individuals in a community
Well, it depends on
working together.
when you're talking about John Stewart, are we talking about classic John Stewart or are we talking about current John Stewart?
I'm talking about current John Stewart from the material that I've seen him do in the last couple of months. Um, he is classic John Stewart was very thoughtful. He
Yes.
was he was very he was very reflective. Um, Current John Stewart seems to utilize his intelligence and his eloquence for uh, the what I would believe is the wrong reasons. They're ultimately going to be destructive purposes.
Well, he's become more political. He's more of a political agenda machine now than in the past, where he was more insightful. In the past, he was,
Yes,
even though he was more, in both cases, he still had a very progressive mindset, but he was more insightful about it in the past, where he wasn't as beholden to the machine as he is now. Now he has to prop up that same machine to prop himself up. He's beholden to it. As before, he was far more independent about it and could literally take a step back and go, well, hang on, I've gone too far. This is too far. This is too much. It's counterproductive. He would see that in the past.
Which is something that Bill Maher they would point at Bill Maher and say, well, he's doing that. He's taking a step back. But it's like, no, the difference between being insightful in the moment and being insightful with hindsight are two different things.
Bill Maher isn't being insightful at all. He's being reactionary. He
didn't push it.
Well, it wasn't that he wasn't pushing it. He's only reacting to the negative consequences to him. It's now affecting him negatively. He didn't care in 2020 and 2019. He didn't care that the nation would go into a recession because he's rich. And he said so himself. He didn't care. He just wanted change. He didn't care that Me Too's being thrown under a bus. He didn't care about the alleged sexual assaults of Joe Biden. He wanted political change. He didn't care about these aspects that were affecting kids and the future. He was in favor of safe spaces. He was in favor of denouncing the founders. He was in favor of all of that. Now that it's negatively impacting him because America has become more dangerous, because it has become weak, because it has become leaderless, now he is contrite, which is forced. Yeah. It's not something natural. It's a result of his prior action, and now he regrets that. It's like the people who regret voting for Joe Biden. It's not because they thought they naturally said, well, no, those aren't good policies. They're like, those policies aren't working. It's actually against my best interest. And now they're upset. That's not the same thing. That's why I don't give Bill Maher credit.
The insight I was talking about is following the speculation. So based on the evidence that you have in the moment, that you realize following it through to possible conclusions that it wouldn't be a good idea and you could take a step back. Jon Stewart would do that. Right. Like he would say, well, what about this? And then if we go through this, then it comes out to probably this. And then if this happens, oh, wait, no, that's no good. Let's go back. But Bill Maher didn't do that. Like he was like, no, we have to do this. And like you say, he became contrite because it started to affect him directly.
Yeah.
That has to stop. We have to be able to put some stock in speculation again. We have to be able to look at the evidence that's in front of us and try to project where that evidence is going to lead to possible consequences. It's how you're supposed to look at situations around you when you remain situationally aware, right?
Right.
I mean, you're looking at all the evidence around you. You're looking, okay, this might be a security risk. This might be a security risk. If this trend keeps happening, are we going to see X? Bless you.
Thank you. Well, it's kind of...
That type of thinking has to be reborn in people because it's being lost and we're just reacting to everything.
Well, it's kind of like what I was saying in my interview in the United Kingdom with the alternative, the guys, Cam and Aaron are their names. And as I was speaking with them, I said, well, the whole thing is we need to understand where the problem started, where it veered all out, where we went off the rails. We need to be able to look back at that because then we can go back to that moment or to that decision, go backwards in time and start over and say, okay, well, that decision didn't make sense. Let's try something different. Let's go back, reset to something we know was working at least a bit and didn't have all this baggage and problems, and then restart and say, okay, well, that direction doesn't work. Let's try a different idea. That's left, right. It doesn't matter where you are. Let's go back to what we knew worked, at least partially, and then try something new. Yeah, go back to the effective and then try and make it more effective. And if that fails, then we go back again and we do it again. Except you can only do that if you're willing to accept that you failed and that you screwed up, that you were wrong, and we reset. But political figures can't do that and win elections, which is why they'll never say they're wrong. They'll never say
Right.
red flag laws have never worked, as an example. They have never worked. Gun control has never worked. Every promise we have been given about it has never come true. They have always said you
Yeah.
will be more safe if we do this, and they are wrong every single time. It is empirical. It is a fact. It's not an opinion. It's not a guess. It is a fact. It has never worked. So why don't we go back and try again? No, we're going to double down on things like now Joe Biden's putting $230 million more dollars of our taxes onto doubling down on red flag laws. But they're abusive, and we know they're abusive. We know they've killed innocent citizens. We know that they have caused people to commit suicide. We know that they have not stopped any mass shootings, any school shootings, or gun violence at all. So why are we doing this?
Correct.
No, the answer is go back, get rid of the red flag laws, and look at the root problem. Try again, because this isn't a solution. It hasn't worked since 1999, anywhere that it has been used. Why are we doing this? Because the politicians are afraid to say, that didn't work, I was wrong, let's try again, because they won't get reelected.
That almost seems to me like an example that was given to me for the Pennsylvania legislature. There's a friend of mine that was working head of security at the Harrisburg building, the Capitol building.
Mhm.
And I had talked to him once about possibly running for public office, and he said, don't do it. And I was like, why not? He goes, well, let me tell you. The system has been tweaked so that you have to play by the rules of the system. Otherwise, what ends up happening is you get stonewalled, and you'll look like a failure, and your constituents will never reelect you.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, but that shouldn't matter. You should be able to go in as a civil servant and do your job, and if you don't get reelected, you don't get reelected. And he's like, yeah, but that's not how the game is played.
No.
If you want to get the stuff done for your constituents, you have to play by the rules that they set. Otherwise, you're going to get no money. You're not going to get any kind of support, and your constituents are going to be left with nothing.
Yes.
And they're going to be mad at you. They're not going to be mad at the system. They're going to be mad at you. And no matter how much you try to convince your constituents that you tried your best, if you don't get results, they're not going to care about that. They
Because
just want to see the result.
Well, yeah, and they've been trained. The public has been trained to have an immediate response, which is the
Right.
do something reaction. The public will say, do something, and they expect politicians to come up and give a promise immediately of something that will solve
Right.
the problem that never solves the problem. But it pushes off that question and that pressure till the next election. So they made it. And now it's kicked down the road and no one's gotten anything better. That's the problem with, if you're going into politics today, and I do recommend people run for elected office. I've run for elected office.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
Because if you don't try, then you're definitely going to fail. You know,
Absolutely.
Nothing's going to change.
But you also have to work around and understand there's certain realities. One of the realities to be elected in any significant office is that you have to be very clear. Here's my immutable positions, and everything else is mutable. You have to understand that clearly. You have to make it well defined for your constituents and most importantly for yourself. Here's my immutables, and everything else is mutable. You have to understand that. If you want to be elected, you want to be in Congress, you want to be in Senate, you have to understand everything except what you make clear is immutable is mutable. It will change. It has to. Otherwise, you won't get anything done. You will be ostracized, and you won't be there for more than one term.
Correct. And that's what he was trying to tell me. And it's like, that's how the game is played. So, I mean, in the long run, the best thing to do is to focus locally, make sure that you are active in your communities, and try to insulate your communities as much as possible.
Oh, absolutely.
But I'm going to let you go.
Okay. I thank you for the time and the call.
You're welcome. We'll catch you next time. Hopefully you'll be feeling better.
No, I'm sure. No problem. All right, folks. So that was the conversation with one of the one of our audience members. That's Dow, and I think he had some great points to make up. I know Agent Black has gone on. I know it's 7 hours. God, it's like what 1 a.m. for him. God, you got to get to work, Agent Black. Surprised he stayed with us this long, but I love it because he's in the UK. But I want everyone to think about these things that we've talked about today, about how these are all interacting. And I've been saying it a lot this year, and I will say it even more as we go forward, as we talk to more candidates, as we talk about more of the issues that are affecting us, as hopefully we see more and more predictions that we've made on this channel. I would like to see them not come true, but they tend to come true because we're being realistic. And hopefully you'll take that to heart. Whether you agree or disagree, it's okay. It's okay. I'm not here. If you notice, I'm not telling you what to vote for. I'm not telling you what to believe in. I am telling you you should question everyone. That you should know more about the details, and you should hear people tell you what are the consequences. To stand up for when they got it right and when they got it wrong. And to be honest with us. To be honest about the consequences we are going to face. And to be accountable for that. And you have to be accountable yourself. You have to. Because we can't make it better. Because the only way, if we're not being accountable, if we're not thinking about the consequences, then we are no more than serfs. We are slaves. At the whim of a small handful of elites who tell us everything to do. What we can and cannot do. In fact, to the point that now they're telling us what we should feel rather than actually having our own emotions. Again, you may agree or you may disagree, and that's fine. Please remember, if you've made it this far into the program or throughout the program, like, share, subscribe. That's what we ask for. It's just like, share, subscribe. I mean, if you want to make a donation, fantastic. Donate $1, donate 50 cents. It's up to you. The link is below. But what we really ask is for you to help us to reach more people around the world, to have these conversations, to share in these thoughts, and to decide, is there a better way forward? And I think there is. But as I mentioned, I am ill. You've heard me. I hope my voice hasn't been too bad, but it is starting to give up now. So I'm going to end it here. We've been on for about 4 hours. I thank you for joining us. And every Sunday at 2:30 p.m., whether I have a cold or not, I am going to be here with you to talk about the issues that matter to all of us, that are affecting all of us. And I look forward to hearing your voices from anywhere in the world to tell us what you think. Because you matter. Your voice matters. Your opinion matters. Your vote matters. And don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise. No matter whether you agree or disagree, you and your thoughts matter. And we look forward to hearing them. I thank you. I want you all to be well. Get some rest, and I'll talk to you soon.